My 5-year husband abruptly and mysteriously filed for divorce. But I heard a startling exchange with his friend that told me everything. 5 years ago, I, a 30-year-old woman, married my 32-year-old husband. After almost 2 years of dating, I was completely smitten with him. I therefore said yes, without hesitation when he proposed to me. I was a surgeon at the time, and my husband was an actor who was having trouble finding a job. I paid for practically everything in the house, but I didn't mind at all. I was more than willing to pay all the bills since I wanted him to pursue his goal. Despite frequently being cast as an extra in most sequences and earning only half of what I did, he never gave up. He recently got a small part in a feature-length movie. I was ecstatic for him. For him, it was a huge event even though he just had 10 to 15 minutes of screen time. Everything appeared to be going well, and in a few weeks they were set to begin filming for his part. But 5 days ago, my husband unexpectedly served me with divorce papers, and my entire world came apart. I was caught completely off guard. I didn't think he would ask me to get a divorce. I felt the same way about him as he had about me. Everything happened so quickly. He said he no longer felt the same way about me when I asked him why. He claimed that now that he was at last receiving serious offers, he wanted to focus more of his time and efforts on his work. He said that this was only the beginning of his career and that he desired a new beginning, one that excluded me. He claimed that the burden of his former life, which reportedly included me, could not hold him down. I was heartbroken. It was unbelievable to me that he was saying this after all the sacrifices I had made and the times I had put his aspirations ahead of my own. That day, I sobbed for hours and pleaded with him to reconsider our marriage, but he refused to listen. He said that he no longer felt anything for me and that there was nothing more to be done. He thought it would be better if we split up now. I was devastated when he packed up his things and departed. I spent the following 4 days completely lost. I was so depressed that I didn't even go to work. I kept hoping that this nightmare would end. After that, my hubby called me yesterday. He had a meeting the following day, so he asked if I could leave some of his formal attire at his friend's house, where he was staying. In the hopes of meeting him face to face and perhaps persuading him to return, I gladly consented. I had no choice but to go to his friend's apartment since I was desperate. When I got there, I heard my husband and his friend conversing inside, and I saw that the door was slightly open. As I was ready to knock, his friend asked him why he had married me in the first place if he had no intention of staying. I was interested in that. I made the decision to remain silent and listen in the hopes of learning more. I had entered at the perfect, if unpleasant time, and it felt like they had already been discussing me. My husband laughed before responding to his friend's inquiry, and he continued by saying that he married me simply to utilize me to advance in his job. He acknowledged that his heart didn't love me. He had cheated on me numerous times over the years with unidentified women he met at parties or on set. I nearly gasped, but I was able to hold myself back. I wanted to hear more from my beloved hubby. He went on to say that a friend of his had introduced us, telling him that I was the daughter of a well-known dentist. My dad is among the state's top dentists, so that much was accurate. My husband was also aware that my dad frequently worked with a well-known actor. Some of his acquaintances in the business had told him about this. Everything started to make sense to me as he talked. He described how he had reached out to me in a desperate attempt to salvage his acting career. It was only a plus that I was rich and, in his opinion, easily influenced. He claimed to love me for 5 years while he waited for a chance to meet my dad's well-known customer. About 5 months ago, at my dad's 50th wedding anniversary celebration, that chance presented itself. Many of my dad's acquaintances, including his most well-liked customer who was also a close friend, were invited. My husband charmed him, spoke with him at the party, and even exchanged phone numbers with him. I didn't know at the time. Due to his hectic schedule, my dad's customer was only at the party for approximately 30 minutes, but within that brief period, my husband was able to get his number. Even though I hate him today, I must admit that when my spouse feels like it, he can be very charming. I wasn't shocked that he was able to pull it off. But I was surprised to learn that my husband had spent 5 years of our life together, causing me unspeakable heartache, all for his own self-serving ends. And to top it all off, I helped him get his current position. On the recommendation of my dad's client, the film's director signed him. I am the one who has been betrayed and is now being discarded through divorce, even though I am the one who made this huge career breakthrough. At that moment, I wanted to go in and give him a face punch, but I controlled myself. I drove home after making my way back to my car on foot. I had plenty of time to analyze my anger and devise a strategy to exact revenge on this self-centered monster because this incident occurred yesterday afternoon. I tried to relax by meditating after I got home. I was enraged and worried that if I didn't manage my emotions, I may physically harm him. I made every effort to divert my attention and devise a scheme to ruin him. Asking my dad for the actor's number, calling him, and insisting that my husband be removed from the movie was one of my first ideas. But since it was a professional issue, I wasn't sure if it would work or if my viewpoint would be taken seriously. I've known my dad's client since my undergraduate days. He knew me much better than he knew my husband, even though we weren't really close. After speaking with my parents, I finally thought it was worth a shot and gave him a call in the evening. I thought there was still a chance to make things better, so I hadn't notified anyone about the divorce yet, not even my family. I was so anxious because this was the first time I was going to admit it. His assistant finally got me through after multiple calls. Following some awkward small conversation, I spoke without pausing and said everything I needed to say. I revealed that my husband had cheated on me and secured a movie role through my dad's and my connections. I requested that he use his power to get my husband fired, stating that this would be the correct thing to do if there was any justice in the world. I'm sure he was as uneasy hearing it as I was speaking it since I said it all at once. There was a pause before he stated he would investigate. After saying thank you, he hung up. The whole experience made me feel ashamed, but it was over. At this point, my only option was to wait for a response from him or my spouse. About 10 o'clock at night, 2 hours later, my spouse began calling me in a panic. I understood then that he must have already been dismissed. I was shocked at how fast it had transpired. I texted the man who made it happen to say thank you. He hadn't had much trouble taking care of it because there hadn't been a legal contract, just a verbal understanding. He responded to my text with good wishes for the future, which I found to be quite considerate and gave me hope again. Without a care in the world, I turned off my phone, disregarded all of my husband's calls and texts, and went to bed. I'm not lying when I say that I had the best sleep of my life. As I was getting ready to go for work this morning, I heard my husband yelling for me from outside my door and pleading with me to open it. I told him to go because I had to leave for work and didn't intend to let him in. He was unwilling to give up though, and insisted that I have one final conversation with him before removing him from my life. I eventually grew tired of his shenanigans and let him in, telling him that I would not waste my time again. He sobbed as he dropped to his knees and admitted that he had erred. He pleaded for another opportunity, saying that I was the only woman he had ever loved. However, I no longer felt sorry for him because I knew how talented an actor he was. After letting him cry for a few minutes, I inquired about the success of his acting role in the movie. I deliberately used a mocking tone because, let's face it, that's precisely what I was doing. He appeared shocked for a second before realizing what had happened. He went crazy when he realized that I was the reason he had lost the chance of a lifetime. He began yelling in my face, saying that I had ruined his life and that I would be held accountable. I also didn't hold back. I shouted back at him, telling him that he deserved this, if not worse, because he had destroyed 5 years of my life. After what seemed like 5 minutes of us yelling at one another, he finally broke down. He was aware that no amount of yelling and yelling would restore what he had lost, neither the role nor the happy life he had been having with me. He was solely responsible for his own actions. Even though he was crying, he made sure to tell me that he would take everything from the divorce and leave me on the streets, which made me feel almost terrible for him. Those were fairly audacious remarks, and any pity I might have had for him was instantly gone. I told him to leave my place as respectfully as possible. He complied, leaving while still sobbing and mumbling obscenities. That day, I made the decision to skip work once more. I wasn't feeling well, and the events had been terrible and weighty. First update. At last, I disclosed the divorce to my family and acquaintances. They were just as caught off guard as I had been when my spouse initially expressed his desires to me. But they were all appalled when I told them what I had heard at his friend's place. They even said that what he had done to me was far worse than my vengeance. When my dad learned that my husband had taken advantage of both him and me to further his objectives, he became quite angry. He wanted to go to my husband's house and use his fists to make him understand, but I was able to calm him down. I'm happy that most people concur that my actions were appropriate. My husband's treatment of me was so harsh. It permanently damaged my trust in marriage and men. He deserved to be punished for his efforts, in my opinion. I had spent many years and a significant amount of money on our marriage, just as he had spent years on his work. I don't think it matters that I destroyed his career on my own if he could destroy our marriage on his own. He keeps contacting me online, pleading with me to retract my remarks and assist him in regaining the part, as if he had been cheated out of a chance. Despite my efforts to block his accounts, he continues to create new ones out of desperation. I'm now thinking of completely stepping away from social networking. After everything he's done, I don't see why he feels entitled to get in touch with me. I hope he eventually understands that he's done and that there's no turning back. It appears that his threats to destroy me throughout the divorce were mostly verbal. We both understand that he cannot harm me in any way. Second update. A few days ago, I erased my social media account and blocked my husband. But it appears that I also need to update my phone number. I've had between 70 and 80 spam calls from various numbers since last night. I'm going wild over it. My phone is constantly buzzing every few minutes, and it's always from a different number. I know it's him, but I'm not sure how he's doing it. I even gave him a call to tell him to stop and to be aware that his actions would have an impact on the settlement. I was obviously bluffing. No deal is possible. I was attempting to use it as leverage to get him to quit pestering me, even though I owe him nothing. He was adamant about denying any role in the calls though. His voice made it clear to me that he was lying, which only made me feel more irritated. As I was about to cry at the end of the conversation, he hinted that if he were to miraculously regain his role, the calls may cease. The final straw was that. I yelled as many colorful profanities as I could at him before shutting off my phone. I have been using my laptop to surf the internet and have yet to switch it back on. I only intend to switch my phone back on after I have a new number. Since he will no longer be able to reach me, hopefully it will stop him from making me insane. Everyone is aware that I will not challenge the divorce. In a few days, we are expected to appear in court. I don't understand why he is acting inappropriately when he is well aware that we will soon be in court together. He is also aware that if I so desired, I could make his situation far worse. I'm lucky he doesn't. I want to let this whole thing go without a struggle since I've already done what I have to do. I can't go on if I hold on to this anger and allow him to bother me. I'm eager to close this phase of my life. I don't care what happens to him. I'm no longer concerned about his future success or failure. Third update. My husband and I are scheduled to appear in court the day after tomorrow. Naturally, he couldn't allow that to occur without acting in a crazy or psychotic manner. I was certain that he could no longer contact me because I had canceled my social media accounts and changed my phone number. I believed that he would be forced to give up since I had finally defeated him. But I didn't realize how insane he really is. My hubby unexpectedly showed up and sat down next to me in the passenger seat last night as I was getting ready to drive home. Before I could even react, he closed the doors. I quickly retrieved my pepper spray from my purse after realizing what was going on. He grabbed the purse and threw it into the back car, but I was too late. I was so scared that I was willing to do anything he asked me to get out of this predicament safely. It became even more frightening when he spoke to me in a calm manner. When he stated that he didn't want much, I called my dad's actor client, retracted my statement, and made sure he was given his role back. I pretended to agree, telling him that in order to make the call, I required my phone out of my handbag. Now, my hubby is definitely stupid, but I'm not. When he gave me the handbag, I immediately reached for my pepper spray and sprayed him with half of it at once. His condition was much worse than mine, which was watering and stinging horribly. He was having trouble breathing, spluttering and coughing. I pulled him out of the car, unlocked the doors, and drove off, leaving him coughing on the ground. Before I had to stop, I had only made it out of the parking lot and a few yards from my place of employment. I realized I couldn't drive home in my current state of vision impairment, so I got out of my car. Fortunately, a taxi arrived, and the driver appeared to be a friendly individual. He volunteered to drive me to the closest police station after seeing something was strange. Without hesitation, I agreed. The 2 hours that followed were a haze. After what had transpired in the parking lot, I was still in shock. Although I had always known my spouse was insane, this was much more than I had anticipated. It was difficult to accept that after 5 years of a happy marriage, this man was suddenly causing me to suffer through this nightmare. Fortunately, he was taken into custody. Because of his condition, he had been unable to leave the parking lot. His face was still red and a little puffy when they took him to the station. The fact that he was in pain made me happy. I left the station after pressing charges, but I went to my parents' house instead of home. I haven't left their house since I got there because I no longer felt safe being by myself. The support from my parents has been tremendous. One little comfort during this journey has been that they have been treating me like their little girl once more. This time, I'm not stopping my dad from fulfilling his commitment to make sure my husband receives a suitable punishment. It is imperative that certain guys realize that they cannot bully women and get away with it. Fourth update. Hello to everybody. A few weeks have passed since my last update, and I'm pleased to report some positive developments. For what he did to me, my husband received a 3-month prison sentence and a hefty fine. I believe this result is fair, even though I wish the punishment had been lengthier. Given the circumstances, we were able to expedite the divorce process, and it will be completed much sooner than typical. I'm so relieved that he doesn't have any compensation rights. In order to make sure he can't find me again, I've also sold the house and my car. In addition to being superior, the new hospital where I work is also nearer to my parents' house. For me, commuting is far more convenient. Even though my spouse can no longer reach me, at least not for the foreseeable future, they won't let me return to living alone, so for the time being I'm still living with my parents. To my surprise, I don't mind remaining with them. As I'm still getting over the shock of everything that's transpired, their support has been consoling. In order to better digest my feelings, I've also begun going to therapy. I'm aware that recovery will take time and that things won't return to normal right away. I try my hardest to move on, but sometimes I can't help but think back on the years we had together. Some of the moments felt so real that it's difficult to realize it was all falsehoods. Every time I find myself thinking about him, I make myself recall the events that followed, particularly the parking lot incident. That brings me back to the here and now. I'm taking things one day at a time, even though I know these wounds won't heal right away. I'm hoping that I'll be all right shortly. And to be honest, I can't wait for that day. Am I the asshole for canceling my wedding after learning my fiancé only agreed due to family pressure and doesn't want to be a husband or father? My wedding was scheduled for last week, but I ran away the night before, so it never happened. I'm a 26-year-old woman. After 3 years of dating, I was engaged to my 26-year-old boyfriend for 6 months. Together, my now ex-fiancé and I had 2 kids. Twin boys who are 1 year old. My boyfriend was initially quite opposed to me having children, and the pregnancy wasn't planned. I was obstinate, though, and informed him that I would have them whether or not he agreed. I thought I could raise my children on my own, so I offered him the opportunity to leave and didn't even ask for child support. The time seemed appropriate for me, and I've always had a strong mother instinct. I was prepared to become a mother. He initially objected, attempting to convince me to end the pregnancy. I made it plain that I would end our relationship if he persisted in pressing me. It was then that he appeared to change his mind. He was a supportive spouse during the pregnancy and a good parent to our sons when they were born. I'll admit that I might not have been able to handle it alone, and we hadn't anticipated twins. I considered myself fortunate that he stayed. I accepted his proposal 6 months after the birth of our sons. It seemed as though he had never previously objected to the pregnancy. I was ready to forgive and go on because he had been so lovely and encouraging. After 3 years of dating and the birth of our first child, it seemed appropriate to tie the knot. We spent months organizing the wedding, and I was truly delighted. My parents, who really liked my ex-fiancé, were also overjoyed. He appeared to be the ideal man. However, everything fell apart the night before the wedding. I suppose it rescued me from what could have been a terrible marriage, but it's hard to imagine that one phone call could end a 3-year relationship. As is traditional, my ex-fiancé and I were staying apart the day before our wedding. He was at his family's house a few blocks away, and I was at our house. He called me after supper to let me know that he was eager to marry me and that he loved me. His remarks moved me to tears. I waited for him to hang up after we said our goodbyes and enjoyed a sweet moment on the phone. Regretfully, or luckily, maybe, he neglected to end the call. I believe that, contrary to his usual practice, he did not press the screen firmly enough. I chose to listen in on their chat because I was curious and could hear his father's voice, so I stayed on the line. He was recently asked by his father if he had been speaking to me. My ex sounded glum and aloof when he responded to his father. I knew right away that something wasn't right. Even though a week has gone by, the events that followed are constantly replayed in my mind. He replied in the affirmative when his father inquired if he still felt the same as he had 2 days prior. His mother then entered the discussion and advised him to proceed with the wedding regardless of his feelings. My boyfriend appeared to lose his temper a bit and told his parents that they couldn't treat him this way and that he would do whatever he pleased. In response, his father said that although they couldn't make him marry someone he didn't love, they could remove him from their family, therefore it was up to him to decide. Then his mother spoke up, telling him that he had to mature and become responsible now that he was a father. She said that although it was already terrible that he had children before marriage, he could still turn things around by getting married rather than delaying it because he didn't feel ready. She believed that if he was prepared to have children, he was also prepared to commit to marriage. His dad felt the same way she did. My ex started to object, claiming that it was unfair that he was being forced to wed me merely to avoid being kicked out of their relationship. He bemoaned how no one in his life appeared to care if he was prepared for milestones or not, and he accused them of being unjust. He claimed that he always had to deal with situations for which he was unprepared. He complained that his parents, who had made him stay with me in spite of his anxieties about becoming a dad, and I didn't give a damn about whether he was ready to be a father. Even though he still didn't feel ready, they were now pressuring him to be married. He persisted in griping about how unfair he was being treated by everyone. After that, I believe he left his phone in the room and rushed out. When I eventually hung up, his parents were still talking about how careless their son was. I was dumbfounded and unsure of what to do. Only after his parents threatened to divorce him against their will did my boyfriend agree to marry me and live with me. I certainly did not anticipate finding out about this the evening before our wedding. I sat in shock for the next 5 minutes. His actions had not shown that he wasn't prepared. He had always been a good parent and boyfriend, even though we had a fight when I told him I was expecting. I was unaware that these were his actual emotions. There's no denying that he was a brilliant performer. I made the decision to flee as soon as I was able to gather myself. I was lucky to have my children with me. A little out of town, I got into my car and drove to a hotel. By the time I got there, it was late, and my children were being grumpy. Without providing an explanation, I blocked my partner and his family after putting them to sleep. That was it. Knowing that the previous year had been nothing more than a massive lie, I sobbed all night long. Around 4 a.m., I finally dozed off. My ex's parents had paid for the wedding location and all other expenses. I didn't care about the money being spent because they were affluent. After all, they had come up with the entire notion. The three of them could handle the fallout. I texted all of my friends and family to let them know that the wedding was off and that I would explain everything tonight before I went to bed. I didn't give any more information. I told everyone not to respond to any messages from my ex or his family, nor should they go near them. I knew my people would follow my instructions without question because I trusted them. I ate my feelings and played with my sons, who were the only people I wanted around me at the time, at the hotel on the day I was meant to get married. Even though I was heartbroken and devastated, I had to put up a brave front for their benefit, and I did just that. I made the decision to return home after taking a day off in order to get my belongings and leave the house. I had already dropped my children off at my parents' house. A day later, I eventually made it to the house, and my ex's reaction was precisely what I had anticipated. I'm still not sure how much of his panicked, worried appearance was real and how much was an act. He appeared to have lost sleep. He said he had been quite concerned about me and asked me where I had been. He went on a tirade about how he and his family had waited for hours on the wedding day without waiting for me to answer. He claimed that I owed them an explanation and a public apology because of what I did, which was unacceptable. Cold feet was no justification, he said, for degrading him and his family in this manner. I said very little. I only informed him that I had just overheard him talking to his folks. For a few seconds, he appeared perplexed, but when he understood what I was talking about, he had the good sense to appear embarrassed. After that, I didn't bother to speak with him or provide any more explanation. He waited outside in the yard while I entered the house. Without saying another word, I gathered my necessities and departed. To be honest, I didn't know what to say to him. I was doing what I believed to be right, and he was doing what he believed to be right. I had lost interest in being a wife. Being a good mother was all I wanted. We hadn't spoken since that nearly a week ago. I believed it to be our demise. I had run out of things to say to him, and he appeared to agree. Or so I believed. He arrived at my parents' house a few hours ago and begged to talk to me. My parents and all of my close friends were aware of what had transpired at this point. Despite my parents' skepticism, I consented to have one final conversation with him. Since the babies had just gone to sleep, I didn't want us fighting or screaming and waking them up, so I didn't let him in. We conversed in the front yard instead. Even though he doesn't feel ready to marry me just yet, he told me he genuinely loves me and apologized for everything he had done to me. He added that he still wants to be a part of our lives and that he loves the children in spite of what he said that evening. I was at a loss for words. Since he had been deceiving me and being phony for about a year, I wasn't sure whether I could trust him again. I was skeptical, of course. Nevertheless, I promised him I would consider my options. He stated that instead of ending things, he wants to try to make things better and give us another chance, free from his parents' meddling. To be honest, I have no idea how to respond to that. Even though I want my children to grow up with their father, I simply cannot trust him at this time. Personally, I could really use a vacation because this week has been really hectic. What if I choose not to give our relationship another chance? That's what I'm left wondering. First update. Hello everyone, I realize it has been a long, but I haven't had time to update you because I've been so busy with work, kids, and moving out. I'm incredibly appreciative of all the love and guidance I've received, and the support has been tremendous. It has been tremendously beneficial throughout this difficult period. Yes, I have discussed custody arrangements with a lawyer. I've made the decision not to reconcile with my ex, thus I want exclusive custody of my children. It was absurd and judgmental of some people to send me harsh texts calling me a selfish mother for even thinking about getting back together with him. In addition to being a mother, I'm a human. Only a week had passed since that phone conversation, and naturally, I still hadn't moved on. After all, it had been a 3-year relationship. I thought about giving him another chance for a moment, but I was emotional because I truly did love him. But today, I feel a lot more stable. I understand that regardless of how I feel about the circumstance, I must prioritize my children and myself. There is no way to get back together with him. All of that hatred and condemnation wasn't necessary in the first place, but I should have anticipated it given that this is the internet. 2 days after calling off the wedding, I began searching for a lawyer. Finding someone I completely trusted and felt at ease with took some time. Because we never imagined this day would arrive, my ex and I had never talked about custody arrangements. I must now take legal action to make sure that no one can take my children away from me. I'm not sure about his parents, but I don't think my ex would even want custody. Given how traditional and conservative they are, I have no doubt that they would be upset if their son were denied custody of their grandchildren. I'm getting ready for any pushback they may give me. My ex and I haven't communicated since our last conversation, which was 3 days ago. This demonstrates to me that his statements about wishing to resolve the conflict were untrue and pointless. He hasn't followed up on me, even though he should have if he really wanted to make things work. I'm certain that not pursuing him again is the right course of action. I won't be with a man who doesn't sincerely want to be with me, and there is no trust left between us. It's great this way. The last thing I need on my plate right now is for him to become upset over the custody arrangement, so I'm going to let him know my decision shortly and hope he doesn't. Second update. Finally, I told my ex that I didn't want to reunite with him and that, just to let him know, I would be requesting full custody. I thought he would be okay with it. He should have been appreciative that I wasn't pressuring him into something for which he wasn't ready because, after all, he acknowledged that he wasn't ready for marriage or children. He didn't, however, take it well. He began to argue with me, claiming that I was unable to harm him in this way. He said that although I could end our relationship if I so desired, I couldn't take his children away from him. Now, if our relationship had been normal, that would have made sense, but it isn't. My ex didn't want children in the first place, as you are fully aware. He wasn't prepared to become a parent until a week ago, but all of a sudden he was battling for custody of the children. I was certain that something was wrong and that his parents were probably still attempting to manipulate him. We were at a restaurant, and I was feeling really ashamed about the commotion he was creating, so I tried to calm him down as he was panicked throughout our argument. He eventually became a little more composed after some time. I couldn't afford a protracted custody dispute, so I made the decision to try to talk sense into his head. I lacked the funds and motivation to do it. Additionally, I was aware that his parents could hire the top attorneys, so even if I had the moral superiority, they might prolong the proceedings. Reasoning with him and hoping he wouldn't argue with me was my best course of action. I informed him that until a week ago, he had been claiming he wasn't prepared for children. I clarified that this was the best course of action for everyone. He could live his life as he pleased, free from the burdens of marriage and children, and I would take care of the children, which was what I wanted anyhow. It seemed like the only sensible course of action because I believed it was what he also wanted. He surprised me by telling me that he had changed his mind and felt prepared to become a father. It simply did not stack up. His declaration that he was prepared just strengthened my thoughts that something more was going on. He couldn't have abruptly changed his mind in a week if he hadn't felt prepared to become a father for a full year. He eventually told me the truth when I asked him if there was anything he wasn't telling me. His parents were responsible. Surprise, surprise. He had gone to his parents after I informed him I knew everything and the wedding was put off. They instructed him to swiftly put me straight. He came up to me a week later for that reason. His parents claimed that although they had come to terms with the fact that I would not wed him because it was now beyond their control, they would not allow him to lose custody of their grandchildren. If he didn't persuade me to accept shared custody, they threatened to cut him off once more. He was virtually pleading with me to accept a joint custody agreement at this time. I simply left because I was so repulsed. It was unbelievable to me that he was dancing to his parents' music once more. I had given him a free pass, but he was still unable to make up his mind. He wanted his parents' money more than he wanted to commit to me or become a father. I didn't want him near our children if that was his only concern. They were worthy of better. I didn't want him in my life or my children's lives in any way, therefore I didn't even want child support. He was obviously lacking in moral character and would stop at nothing to maintain his parents' favor. It was pitiful. I've blocked him everywhere once more in the days that have passed. I don't want to see or speak with him. In his final message to me, he suggested that we agree to share custody and that if his parents died, he would divide his inheritance with me. It's unbelievable that he's actually putting forward this absurdity for no other reason. I suppose this is my punishment for first falling for a pampered brat. I am a self-made lady who has risen through the ranks on my own. Although my parents did fund my education, we didn't have a lot of money. I had to work really hard for what I have now since I had to rely on scholarships to pay for college. My ex is the only son of parents who are very well off. You all know the type, so I doubt I need to elaborate. When he started dating me, I felt he had changed, and he really convinced me that he had. However, I was mistaken. He fooled me for a good 3 years, which proves he's a brilliant actor. I don't want to stay to find out more now that I can finally see him for who he really is. I'm finished. I have no problem raising my children by myself. A parent who doesn't even want to be a father is no better than any other father. I'm positive now that I made the right choice. Instead of turning this into a protracted custody dispute, I just hope he realizes his mistake and revokes his parental rights. I will continue to pray. Third update. Hi everyone, I'm here to finally tell you all some wonderful news. Although I've been quite busy, I realize it's been a while since my last update. First things first, I now live in a much smaller apartment with my babies, but it's mine at least. This house is really mine, unlike the one my ex and I shared. My parents can occasionally visit to help with the kids because it's close to their place. Since I obviously can't stop working, I've also hired a full-time babysitter to help me. I am extremely fortunate to be able to purchase this at this time. I am quite appreciative of my parents' financial support as well. They're trying their hardest, but none of us anticipated this. I consider myself lucky to have parents that are so devoted and encouraging. Now for the section about my ex that I know most people are interested in. He gave up his parental rights by signing. My best assumption is that either his parents gave up or he eventually stood up to them. I'm not sure what changed. I assume it's the former because a friend told me he moved out of their residence. A few days ago, he expressed regret to me and even offered to reimburse me financially. However, I had no intention of accepting money from my former partner. I don't care that some of you may believe that was a bad choice. When I stated that I no longer wanted to interact with him, I wasn't joking. I forgive him, but that doesn't mean I have to pay him back. All I want to do is go on. Without his assistance, my parents and I are more than capable of parenting my children. I responded to his text by telling him everything was okay but requesting that he stop contacting me. He has so far respected that. Giving my children the greatest life possible is my top priority right now. I no longer have the time to be depressed or upset about my ex. The only thing that counts to me is being the greatest mother I can be for my kids. My mom remarried, brought in her husband and stepdaughter, who insulted me and damaged my things. Now, they seized my house during my trip. It never occurred to me, 27 degrees Fahrenheit, that I would write an article like this, yet here we are. It all began when I was seated in our living room and informed by my parents that they were divorcing. I was already living with them, saving money, and working a regular office job. There was no fighting or yelling during the divorce. It was just two people who had grown apart and had different goals in life. I think I handled it quite well because I had anticipated it. They were living parallel lives under one roof, and family dinners had grown infrequent. I continued our pizza and sci-fi movie habit by spending every other weekend with Dad, 59 million, who moved to an apartment across town. A year after the divorce, Mom, 59F, met my now stepfather, 57M, and everything changed drastically. One morning, she was so excited that she virtually floated home. She declared, "I've met someone special," during breakfast. He has a daughter in college. Wouldn't it be nice to have a sister? My stepfather and his daughter, 21F, came into our home after they were married in a matter of months. Everything began to come apart at that point. When grown-ups were present, my stepsister might have looked like an angel in her expensive clothing, but when they weren't, she was someone else. Little things were the first. The laundry would destroy my preferred work outfits. Coffee stains would inexplicably appear on important documents. My personal belongings would disappear and then reappear damaged. Even worse was my stepfather, who was often making disparaging comments about my lifestyle, appearance, and professional choices. "Don't you think that skirt's a bit short for the office?" he'd respond. Or, "Maybe if you spent less time on your phone and more time networking, you'd have a better position by now." I attempted to discuss these experiences with Mom, but she consistently dismissed my worries. She'd remark, "He's just being protective. He wants what's best for you." Over time, everything became too much to handle. I had spent weeks honing every element of a pivotal presentation while staying late at work. When I arrived home early one evening, I discovered my stepsister purposely destroying my presentation materials in my room. She had ruined my work with markers, leaving her hands smeared with ink. Things became heated when I confronted her and presented Mom and my stepfather with the evidence. The worst part? My stepfather accused me of mistreating his precious daughter, and called me a stupid. As if I were the one causing the trouble, Mom simply sat there and shook her head at me. I had trouble sleeping that night. I had made up my mind by dawn. Dad arrived to fetch me up 20 minutes after I called him. Mom came out to object as I was packing my things into his truck. She remarked, "You're overreacting? Why can't you just try to get along?" I looked over at her. "Your husband called me a fool, and you sat there silently. Your stepdaughter destroyed my work, and you did nothing. That's not overreacting, that's self-preservation." When Dad heard this, he went up to my stepfather. Security had to step in before things were physical since it heated up so quickly. It was like inhaling fresh air after being submerged when I finally moved in with Dad. It's time to stop being cautious. No more looking for sabotage in my room. A few days later, I received a note from Mom. "I can't believe you set your father against my husband like this. You're tearing this family apart." I didn't answer. Which family was she referring to? The one where I was verbally abused by her husband? Where did her stepdaughter ruin my belongings? I concentrated on my work and saving money rather than obsessing over it. I brought meals from home, while my coworkers went out for fancy lunches. I stayed late and took on more work when others went out to bars after work. I contribute a sizable amount of my monthly salary to my future home fund. I eventually purchased a home with 2 bedrooms, a bathroom, a kitchen with granite countertops, and a backyard where I could grow a garden after 3 years of diligent saving. It was all mine, purchased with my own funds after years of diligent effort and cautious saving. I made the decision to throw a housewarming celebration, and I made it clear that Mom could attend. But not my stepsister or stepfather. She concurred. On the day of the party, however, they were all present when I opened the door. "Surprise?" Mom whispered feebly, observing my face. As soon as he saw the hardwood flooring and crown molding, my stepfather began to critique everything, his lips quivering. His statement, "It's nice," sounded anything but. With her nose in the air, my stepsister walked around teasingly about how little the kitchen was and how she would purchase a larger home with a swimming pool. I was done. "Really? That's interesting. What job are you planning to buy it with?" She flushed. "I have prospects." When I said, "Prospects aren't paychecks. Last I heard, you were still living off your dad's credit card." My stepfather took a menacing stride forward as his face grew scarlet with anger. Mom gave me a pitying glance over her shoulder as she swiftly escorted them out after grabbing his arm. I was trembling with rage as they went, but I also felt oddly relieved. At last, I had confronted them, in my own house, according to my own rules. My true friends joined me in celebrating my accomplishment as the celebration went on. I had assumed that would be the end of it, but I had no idea that things would grow much worse. I have to go to work now, so I'll update this post tomorrow with what transpired. Is it wrong of me to confront them? In my opinion, they showed up to disparage all I've worked so hard for even though they weren't invited. First update? Since then, a lot has transpired, and I feel uneasy about my present circumstances. I had an opportunity when my supervisor called me into his office 3 months after the housewarming catastrophe. For a 2-week absence, our organization needed someone to manage a significant project at another branch. My house, especially my indoor garden, was my biggest worry, even though it was a fantastic opportunity for my job. Delicate orchids, temperamental peace lilies, and my pride and joy, a rare bird of paradise that had just begun to flower, were among the many plants I had grown during the previous few months. I couldn't stomach the idea of going back to dead plants, and each one required a different kind of care. I swallowed my pride and drove to Mom's house after weighing my options. I knew she had a green thumb, but we hadn't talked much since the housewarming incident. In addition, I believed that this might be an opportunity to mend our relationship, just Mom and me, without the involvement of my stepsister or stepfather. When I showed up at her house, she appeared astonished. "Is everything all right?" She ushered me into the kitchen and asked. I asked if she could take care of my house, especially the plants, and explained about the business trip. I should have known something was wrong because of the way her face lit up. "Obviously, with nearly too much enthusiasm," she said. "You are aware of my passion for gardening." I gave her the extra keys and thorough instructions on how to take care of each plant. She tucked the papers away after giving them a fleeting glance. She said, "Don't worry about anything. Simply concentrate on your work. Everything will be well taken care of by me." I dismissed it as my own paranoia, but there was something strange about her actions. What could go wrong after all? I thought she was just observing my plants. I told her my itinerary and emergency contacts before I left. I reminded her that I would be gone for 2 weeks. According to the schedule I jotted down, the plants just require water. Please don't invite anyone over or adjust anything. Although she gave a nod, I couldn't exactly read her face. Obviously, honey, everything will be all right. The fact that she had consented so fast in spite of our previous arguments, that she had hardly looked at the care instructions, and that she kept saying, "Everything will be fine," without addressing the plants directly, were all small details that I began to notice while I was driving home. That night, I double-checked every item in my home. Just in case, I snapped pictures of every room in my house. Despite feeling bad about not trusting my own mother, I even put a tiny security camera in my living room. I noticed Mom's car go by my street the following morning as I was packing my bags to go to the airport. She drove by carefully, as if she was checking something, without stopping or waving. She said she was merely running errands in the area when I later called her about it. I'm now writing this from my downtown hotel room. Even if the project is going well, I still feel nervous. Mom's behavior during our check-in calls has been odd. No matter what time of day I call, she always appears to be at my house. I hear strange background noises, such as TV sounds and clinking plates, which shouldn't be present if she's just dropping over to water some plants. She immediately shifted the topic when I inquired about my bird of paradise. "Everything is all right. Try not to worry too much. Simply concentrate on your work." I tried to view the stream from my security camera, but it appears to have been disconnected. While watering plants, Mom says she unintentionally knocked out the cord and was unable to figure out how to plug it back in. Tonight, I spoke with Dad over the phone about my worries. He believes I'm being overly suspicious, but he also brought up Mom's behavior at the housewarming celebration. "My dear," he replied, "keep your eyes wide open. Have faith in your instincts. Even though I still have a week left, I'm thinking of shortening my trip. Am I going overboard? I simply hope I'm mistaken about everything right now." Second update. Well, that was far worse than I had anticipated. Things started to get pretty strange during my second week here, with excuses like, "in the middle of something," or "can't talk right now, everything's fine." My mom stopped returning my calls on a daily basis and instead started texting me back. I heard several people in the background when she finally picked up, including what sounded strangely like my stepsister's chuckle. The social media posts followed. Since I have blocked my stepsister, I don't typically check her accounts, but I received screenshots from a coworker who follows her. Selfies that she posted from what was obviously my kitchen were there. One caption said, "I love my new granite countertops." She was seen relaxing on my couch in another. "Watch Netflix while relaxing in my new living room." I was feeling nauseous. She had been posting these for days, according to the timestamps. She responded with heart emojis and the following when her pals inquired about her new location. "I finally found my ideal home." I tried contacting Mom again right away. Directly to voicemail, I dialed the phone of my stepfather. Blocked. Even my stepsister blocked me when I attempted to phone her. I called my neighbor next door in a desperate attempt to get help. She hesitated before answering, "Oh yes. Over the past week, I've observed your sister moving things. I assumed you were aware. According to your mother, you were allowing her to stay while she recovered." I could hardly hold the phone because my hands were shaking so much. Dad was furious when I called him. "Take the next flight back home," he said. "I'll see you over there." I was able to reserve a red-eye flight, which landed shortly after midnight. The first thing I noticed when the Uber dropped me off at my house, the house I had worked so hard to purchase, was that all of the drapes had been altered. I could see strange decorations and furniture through the windows. I tried my key in the lock with shaking hands. It refused to turn. I made another attempt, this time with more caution. Nothing. Suddenly, the key that had suited my own house perfectly no longer did. At that moment, I heard footsteps strolling around my house as if they were supposed to be there. The door opened before I could call 911, and my stepsister appeared, dressed in pajamas as if she owned the house. She dared to appear irritated at my presence, and her blonde hair was in an untidy bun. "Why are you in this place?" My brain was having trouble processing what I was witnessing, so I said the words in a whisper. "Obviously, living here," she grinned. "I've been here for several weeks. While you were off playing businesswoman, Daddy helped me move in." With my suitcase still in hand, I stood there feeling angry. This is my home. Leave. Right now. She studied her manicured nails while leaning against my doorframe. Yes, that isn't taking place. I feel very at ease here. By the way, the water pressure in the bathroom is fantastic. Acquire. Outside. Of course, my own home. Every word had enough edge to pierce. In reaction, she slammed the door in my face and laughed. Really laughed. The latch clicked, and then I heard her footsteps as she left. With my bags all about me, I stood on my own front porch, shaking with anger. The flower beds I had meticulously arranged were illuminated by the yard lights I had put. I could see my living room through the glass, but it was no longer my living room. She tossed her jacket over my couch. My hardwood floors were littered with her shoes. I took out my phone and dialed Mom, my hands shaking. She sounded sleepy as she heard the third ring. What's the matter? What's the matter? I nearly let out a yell. I just got home to find my stepsister living in my house. She says she's been here for weeks. Tell her to get out right now, or I'm calling the police. Don't contact the police, please. Mom's voice changed from drowsy to frantic. We'll be over. Just wait there, please. What other place should I go? I can't get out of my own home. The next half hour was the longest I've ever experienced. I watched the lights in the houses next to mine turn on as I paced back and forth on my front porch. Seeing me out here in the middle of the night, what did they think? A few automobiles passed slowly, perhaps debating whether to make their own police call. At last, Mom's vehicle arrived, driven by my stepfather. Still wearing their jammies beneath their coats, they hurried out. What's happening? I confronted Mom and made a demand. Why is my stepsister in possession of my house keys? Why do you allow her to reside here? At least Mom had the grace to appear uneasy. She needed a place to stay, honey. She was unable to pay the rent increase when her lease expired. Your home was just sitting there, unoccupied. Just sitting there, vacant? It's my home. You weren't entitled. As if it clarified everything, Mom added. The girl needed somewhere to live. Anyway, your house is too large for one person. I kept my eyes on my mother's face, hoping for some recognition of how totally she had violated my confidence. Rather, she only stood there, offering justifications for the unacceptable. As always when I was younger, my stepfather went forward with his chest puffed out. Look, telling you about her moving in was pointless. You would have simply refused? I would have said no, of course. I can't even enter my own home since the locks have been changed. Anyway, they needed to be changed, he replied, dismissively waving his hand. I was kind to you. I gaped at him in shock. You know that's against the law, don't you? Changing the locks on someone else's property is not an option. He sneered. Legal, illegal. It's finished now. This house is too large for just you, and she needs somewhere to stay. I whispered, lowering my voice to a perilous whisper. Get her out. Get her out of here or I'll call the cops. That recognizable sneer twisted my stepfather's cheeks. You're not going to do it. Mom moved forward, her hands clenched. That's it if you call the police. I'll never talk to you again. Do you want it that way? To utterly ruin this family? I let forth a rough, acrid laugh. This family? Do you mean the time you allowed your husband to occupy my home without permission? That household? Rather than answer, they turned and left me there with my bags as they entered my house. With a last click, the door shut behind them. As I took out my phone, my hands stopped shaking. Don't hesitate any longer. No more attempting to maintain harmony. Even though Dad believes I made the correct decision, I can't get Mom's vow to never talk to me again out of my mind. Third update. When I dialed 911, things proceeded swiftly. 2 police cars with bright lights arrived in less than 20 minutes. I told the officers what was going on, and the neighbors were clearly awake now, watching from behind their curtains. Are you the legitimate owner? The officer inquired. Using my phone, I retrieved the property records and screenshots of my stepsister's social media posts demonstrating her move into her new place. I said, yes, I do have all the paperwork. I gave my mother a key so she could water my plants while I was gone on business. Rather, they changed all the locks and moved my stepsister in. The doorbell was rung by the officer. After a long silence, there were shuffles coming from within. The door opened at last. As they stood there, my mother, stepfather, and stepsister made a vain attempt to project confidence. Good evening, said the cop. Everyone inside must provide identification and proof of residency. My stepfather took the stage, speaking in his most convincing business voice. There was a miscommunication. My daughter is permitted to remain here by my stepdaughter. She is attempting to stir trouble after they had a falling out. That is untrue, I interrupted. I never granted authorization. While I was out on business, they exploited me. Inquire about the locks. They will acknowledge that they altered them without telling me. The first thing my stepfather said was, the old locks were defective. You admit that you changed the locks without the homeowner's consent? The officer paused to take notes. My stepsister came forward, dread taking the place of her previous arrogance. Daddy assured me things would be all right. He claimed that after she grew accustomed to the concept, she wouldn't mind. Changing locks on someone else's property and occupying their home without permission constitutes illegal entry, the officer replied, glaring at my stepfather. We will need to request that you and your daughter visit the station. Mom burst into tears. This is simply a family issue, please, we can resolve this. Your husband and stepdaughter have admitted to changing locks and occupying property without the owner's consent, the officer sternly retorted. It is illegal to do so. After that, everything occurred pretty fast. As they escorted my stepsister to the patrol car, she began to cry. For the first time, my stepfather remained silent despite his fury turning his face crimson. As they took her husband and daughter away, Mom shook on the porch. I called an emergency locksmith with the authorities' assistance, and he came an hour later. Mom eventually spoke as he sought to get me back into my own house. How were you able to? She hardly raised her voice above a whisper. How could you harm your own family in this way? Looking at her, this lady who had spent years choosing everyone else over me, I felt oddly at ease. You stated long ago that they were your true family, Mom, I murmured softly. You sat there silently the day she ruined my work presentation. The day you turned away when he called me derogatory names. They treated me like trash every time you told me to be the bigger person. They were the ones you repeatedly selected. They will now have criminal histories, she cried. Was it what you were looking for? I answered, I wanted my mother to protect me. My goal was to feel secure in my own house. The only thing I wanted was for you to pick me. After completing his task, the locksmith gave me the replacement keys. I tested them in the lock as Mom watched. From now on, you are no longer my daughter, she declared, her voice trembling with rage. You have no right to ruin our family in this way. For the last time, I looked at her. The day you decided that your new spouse and his daughter were more significant than your own child, you ruined our family. I just quit allowing you all to mistreat me. She climbed into her vehicle and drove off. I entered my home, my transformed, violated home. All of my lovely plants had died from carelessness. My beloved bird of paradise was also wilted and brown. My stepsister had filled my cabinets with her belongings and reorganized everything in the kitchen. Designer clothes were all over my spare bedroom, which had been transformed into her personal closet. Later that day, the police made a call. They wanted to know whether I would file a complaint. I considered forgiveness, family loyalty, and Mom's tears. Then I recalled being gaslighted, abused, and told to just take it. Yes, I firmly said. I wish to file charges. In a frightening email, my stepfather threatened to sue me for his daughter's psychological suffering. Without replying, I sent it to my attorney. On social media, my stepsister made evasive posts about toxic people who pretend to be victims, but I suppressed her accounts. Over the weekend, I thoroughly cleaned my house to remove any evidence of their presence. I started over after discarding the dead plants. I installed better cameras and changed all the security codes with the help of Dad and his girlfriend. Mom sent one last text last night, saying, I hope you're happy with what you've done. I blocked her number since you've ruined everything. Fourth update. A lot has transpired since my last update, which was a few months ago. The court case proceeded more quickly than anticipated. Rather than risk a trial, both my stepsister and my stepfather accepted plea agreements. They were both placed on probation and mandated to reimburse me for the expense of replacing the locks and for the damage they caused to my residence. Above all, they have a legal obligation to avoid my property. In court, my stepsister attempted to play the victim by claiming that she was only doing what her father had told her to do and was unaware that it was against the law. The judge was unimpressed, particularly after seeing her boastful social media posts about her new house. Until the very end, my stepfather remained haughty, accusing his lawyer of being spiteful and disrespectful. Mom attended the court sessions, but she sat beside them. She never gave me a glance. She made an attempt to approach me in the parking lot following the sentencing. Are you happy now? She inquired. Your stepsister has a criminal record because of you. Is this retaliation? I felt nothing except sympathy when I looked at her, actually looked at her. Mom, this is not retaliation. This is the result. They moved in without my consent after breaking into my house and changing my locks. How could that be acceptable? As usual, Mom said, She needed a place to stay. I answered, then you ought to have allowed her to remain with you. Or assisted her in locating a residence of her own. You decided to steal mine instead. As she normally does when she loses an argument, she breaks down in tears. You have my undying forgiveness for this. This family has been ripped apart by you. I maintain my composure. No, Mother. When you decided that their enjoyment was more important than my well-being years ago, you tore this family apart. I'm just at last advocating for myself. I ran into my aunt at the grocery store last week. She made an effort to guilt-trip me by claiming that Mom was having trouble adjusting to our distance from one another and that I ought to try to make amends. I informed her that some bridges must remain burned. I'm getting better sleep now. The more time passes, the less I anxiously check my phone for alerts from my new security system. The sunlight coming through my windows is helping my new plants grow. I'm going to see Dad and his girlfriend next month, and they call frequently. Out of habit, I occasionally find myself reaching for the phone to contact Mom, but the temptation is quickly squelched when I recall that night on my doorstep when I was locked out of my own house. My mother passed away years ago when she decided to prioritize her new family over me, so losing her isn't the worst part. Accepting that she will never comprehend what she did wrong is the most difficult aspect. In his last threatening email, my stepfather discussed family loyalty and how I had betrayed them through his attorney. One word was my lawyer's response. Family loyalty should have started with respecting my client's property rights. I've changed my phone number, installed cameras throughout my house, and blocked them on all platforms. This may seem extreme to others, but I'm not taking any chances in light of what they did. I've decided to sever all communication with them. Life continues. Last week, I received a promotion at work. The plants they killed are being replaced by new ones, and my garden is growing again. I recently started seeing someone who respects my limits and is aware of my trust concerns. There are some bridges that must remain burned. Sometimes severing links is the only healthy option, not just a choice. This is going to be my last update on the matter. It's time to put this chapter behind me and concentrate on starting a new life. A life free of poisonous relatives. Without being overly cautious. Without sacrificing my personal limits for those who have never honored them. I am at liberty. My parents defended my brother's $40,000 debt, tried to access my bank account, and called me selfish for saying no. Here's how I fought back. I've been lurking around here for a while, but until now, I never felt the need to write anything. I'm 35 feet. I need some perspective because my family has finally pushed me to the limit. Somehow, I'm always portrayed as the villain, regardless of what I do. Dealing with this prolonged family issue that appears to have no end in sight has truly worn me out, both mentally and emotionally. I have developed my career from the ground up and am currently employed as a middle manager at a large Silicon Valley software company. I've worked hard and had many sleepless nights to earn all I own, including my house, car, and money. You wouldn't believe the terrible familial dynamics I had to overcome to reach this point in my life. I'll give you some background on our family's history. Since I turned 18, I have been totally self-sufficient. And I mean it in every sense of the word, financially, emotionally, and intellectually. The way my parents raised my brother and me was, to put it mildly, problematic at best, and they weren't exactly winning any parenting prizes. As a middle-class suburban family outside of Boston, we appeared to be the ideal American family. We lived in a good neighborhood with good schools. My mom taught elementary school part-time, and my dad worked in insurance. Beneath that idyllic exterior, though, there was an unwritten rule that influenced my entire upbringing. I was supposed to be the responsible one, the model, the one who always had to lead by example, while my younger brother Jason, 27 million, could do no wrong. From a young age, the inequities were brutally apparent. One instance in particular came to me when Jason was 8 years old and I was 16. My parents grounded me for a month after I received a B+ on a single chemical test, claiming I was wasting my potential. When Jason was caught robbing our dad's wallet for the third time that same month, they just said he was going through a phase. This was only one instance of the ongoing inequity in the way we were handled. It wasn't an isolated incident. Every time Jason made a mistake, and trust me, he made a lot of mistakes, it was ignored. "He'll learn eventually," my mother would remark with that dismissive wave of her hand, or "he's just sensitive," which was code for "let's pretend this never happened and hope he figures it out." In the meantime, it felt like the sky was dropping if I even stumbled. The pressure was relentless and debilitating. "Why aren't you trying harder? You need to set a better example for your brother. Don't you know he looks up to you?" I worked part-time at a local coffee shop, volunteered at the library, took all of my AP classes in high school, and tried to keep my GPA flawless because universities look for that kind of thing. Jason, on the other hand, rarely attended class and mostly stayed in the basement to play video games. Nevertheless, I somehow had to try harder. No matter what I accomplished, it was never sufficient. They would question why I didn't receive an A+ in calculus if I brought home straight A's. Rather than praising me, my mother's first reaction after I was chosen valedictorian was, "I hope this doesn't make your brother feel bad about his grades." This scenario continued into adulthood, with Jason struggling to pass his classes and everyone saying, "At least you're doing your best, sweetie. Not everyone is cut out for academics." The bigger the stakes, the worse it got, if anything. Jason dropped out of community college after one semester because it was too stressful. My parents paid his rent for a gap year, that ended up being 5 years of him finding himself. I worked 2 part-time jobs to pay for state college, one at a coffee shop in the mornings and another at a table waiting at night. I still recall the evening I moved away when I was 18. I was able to rent a small studio apartment with a roommate because of the money I saved from my part-time work. My dad said, "Well, you'll need to start paying rent if you're staying here anyway," when I told him I was leaving home, but they never asked Jason for $1 when he was still living at home at the age of 25. Because job hunting was emotionally draining for him, they even granted him an allowance. They never once offered to cover my living expenses or college tuition, not that I expected them to. But it still hurt to see them go above and beyond for Jason while I was on my own. I worked several jobs, took out student debts, and ate more dinners of ramen noodles than I would want to recall. Jason, meanwhile, continued to live with them until he was in his mid-20s, jumping from one failing job to another while always coming up with an explanation that it wasn't his fault. He would say things like, "The manager had it out for me," or, "The company's toxic culture wasn't a good fit for my personality." He never acknowledged his own responsibilities and always pointed the finger at something outside of himself. And by covering up his filth and offering excuses, our parents encouraged this conduct at every opportunity. I worked 2 jobs while attending college, graduated with honors, and got an entry-level job at a software business. I worked my way up from there, putting in a lot of overtime and seizing any chance to get more education and certification. My parents never offered to help, and I never asked for it either. However, they had no trouble approaching me for financial assistance whenever Jason needed a little help to get back on his feet. Now fast forward to last week. It was remarkable in and of itself that my mother called. You must realize that my mom doesn't call to talk. She never calls to say hello, check in, or inquire about my life. She calls when she's in need of things. I'm referring to the type of call that begins with excessively pleasant small talk, as if they're attempting to win you over before revealing the true reason for the call. That's precisely what took place last week. "How's work? Are you still at that tech company? Have you been eating well?" she asked at the beginning, which was so unusual that I knew something was up. My mother doesn't give a damn about my diet. The only thing she knows about my job is that I do something with computers. She couldn't even recall the name of my firm when we last spoke, which was during Thanksgiving 3 months earlier, even though I had been employed there for the previous 5 years. She seemed to be trying too hard to sound casual, and the entire conversation felt forced. She inquired about my boyfriend. I've been single since my engagement ended last year, another narrative in which Jason played a not-so-insignificant role, and apartment. I've owned a house for 2 years. Even my cat, to which I have never given birth due to an allergy. Every question reminded me of how little she truly knows about my life and felt like a tiny paper cut. Jason was in trouble once more when she struck me with it. I wasn't shocked. Jason seems to get into problems all the time. However, I didn't anticipate this. He had apparently accrued $40,000 in debt, not the kind of debt that can be dismissed as young folly, such as credit card debt or student loan debt. No, he had borrowed from some very dubious individuals, and they were now sincerely demanding their money back. My mother's voice broke as if she were going to cry, which I'm sure she believed would get me to give in. It has worked numerous times. She wasted no time in heaping on the guilt. You've done so well for yourself. You've always been the strong one. Jason's not like you. He needs your help. He's sensitive. You know how he gets when he's under pressure. As I sat in my home office, trying to take in what she had just said, I looked out the window at the neighborhood that I had worked so hard to afford. $40,000. How could anyone possibly accumulate that much debt? My mom dismissed it like she was swatting away a bothersome fly when I asked her how it happened, half anticipating some ludicrous explanation about a botched business endeavor or a scam he had fallen for. She said, "That doesn't matter right now," with the same contemptuous tone that always made my stomach turn. "What matters is that he's your brother. Family helps family. We've always taught you that family comes first. For years, they have used that line, "family helps family," as an excuse. When they asked me to lend Jason money for his revolutionary cryptocurrency investment, which he lost all of in 2 weeks, that's what they stated. They said that after his girlfriend ejected him, he took my credit card information. They wanted me to let him stay at my house. Every time they required me to cover for Jason, fix anything for him, or clean up a mess he had made, they said that. And each time, I overcame my annoyance and followed their instructions. I did not want to be the villain. Because deep down, there was still that little girl who longed for her parents' approval, thinking that perhaps this time they would recognize my assistance, my sacrifice, and my continual saving of their beloved boy. But $40,000? It wasn't merely a favor or a loan. It was a down payment for a home. That was a year of arduous labor. That served as my safety net, emergency reserve, and security for the future. This time, I couldn't do it. I told her no for the first time in my life, right up. I apologized, but I was powerless to save Jason from the disaster he had made. The tone of the conversation suddenly changed. In roughly 2 seconds, my mother moved from being pathetic to being enraged. Had it not been so horrifying, the metamorphosis would have been nearly remarkable. The mother's gentle, worried voice had vanished, to be replaced by an icy, piercing voice. She began to scream. "You're being selfish?" Her voice getting louder as she spoke. "After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? You're abandoning your family when they need you most." The nuclear option was even mentioned by her. "Do you want his blood on your hands? He borrowed from some nasty folks. What would happen if he did?" The manipulation was so obvious that it was quite comical, nearly. However, her attempt to hold me accountable for Jason's bad decisions, again, was not amusing. As though his choices, errors, and total lack of accountability were somehow my fault. Then I ended the call. I was no longer able to listen to it. My chest felt constricted, as if someone were sitting on it, and my hands were shaking so much that I could hardly press the end call button. However, behind the familiar burden of familial expectations, the shame, and the fear, there was comfort. I was relieved that I had maintained my position for once. I've put in too much effort to be brought down by the poor decisions of others. I've devoted years to developing my job, becoming self-sufficient, and establishing a life apart from serving as Jason's safety net. I simply couldn't bear the idea of discarding all of that. Of maybe jeopardizing my own financial stability to allow his recklessness to continue. However, the problem with growing up in a dysfunctional home is that guilt creeps in almost instantly, even if you know you're making the right decision and are positive you're acting in your own best interests. Even though I know I'm not the bad guy, my family has a way of changing the facts, making me doubt my own judgment and making me feel that way. And it was the same this time. I can't get rid of the thought that perhaps I made the wrong choice, even though I said no and know it was the right one. At the moment, confronting my family seemed like the correct thing to do, but now I'm left wondering if I've made things worse. But what if they're correct? Could I be being self-centered? What if Jason does suffer as a result of my refusal to assist? The logical side of my brain understands that I have no responsibility for my brother's decisions or the results of those decisions. However, a part of me that is still that young child, begging for her parents' approval, continues asking herself, what if? To be honest, I have no idea what will happen next. That call was only the beginning. I was totally unprepared for what transpired next. I suspect that this is not the end. Particularly with Jason, my parents have never been good at taking no for an answer. I'm trying to remain strong, though. I'm trying to keep in mind that I have the right to defend my future and myself. As this situation develops, I suspect I'll require additional guidance. I'll provide an update shortly. First update. First of all, I want to thank everyone who left encouraging comments on my previous post. To be honest, I didn't anticipate such a strong reaction. The previous week has seen a sharp increase in tension, and not in a positive way. Do you recall that I sensed this wasn't the end? Yes, I was correct. As soon as I hung up on my mom, the harassment campaign began. Initially, it was just a flurry of text messages. The typical guilt-tripping fare. Then, however, things became considerably more sinister. My bank notified me of the unusual behavior last Tuesday. Someone had tried to use what seemed to be stolen personal information to get into my account. I received a direct call from the bank's fraud department. They claimed that a huge transfer attempt using my credentials had been detected by their security system due to the suspicious IP address. The fraud investigator told me that the person who attempted to access my account had my mother's maiden name, my social security number, and even the name of my first pet, all of which are standard security questions. Jason would be the only one with access to all that information. Upon realizing that my own brother would attempt to steal from me, I promptly updated all of my security questions and passwords. Very difficult. Money was no longer the only factor in this. This was a completely new kind of betrayal. This is where it becomes even more bizarre though. One of the few relatives with whom I truly get along, my Aunt Catherine, gave me a call yesterday. It seems that my parents have been giving a totally different account of what happened to everyone in the family. They have portrayed me as some cold-blooded monster who is living in luxury while her brother suffers, and they claim that I am hoarding my fortune while poor Jason is fighting for his life. My aunt called to hear my side of the tale, happily not believing it. God bless sensible family. She was startled when I told her about the attempted bank fraud. She also disclosed information that I was unaware of. It seems that Jason had attempted to borrow money from multiple family members in recent months, each time claiming a different reason for his need. He told a wide range of stories. He told our old grandma that he needed money to pay his medical fees. It was for a sure-thing investment opportunity, according to our cousin Mark. It was to launch a modest business, according to our Uncle Steve. He informed our parents that he owed money to dangerous people, but none of these allegations fit. But this morning was the real kicker. My dad sent me an email, which was the first time he had spoken to me directly since this whole situation began. It was icy, cunning, and, to be honest, a little menacing. This is a portion of his writing. Your actions are forcing us to reconsider your position in this family. Your mother and I have always provided for you, supported your education, and given you every opportunity to succeed. Your current success is a direct result of our sacrifices. If you continue to abandon your brother in his time of need, there will be consequences. Think carefully about your next move. The part about them funding my education made me laugh. My student loan payments are still ongoing. However, the warning was unmistakable: assist Jason or risk being cut off from the family. They believe they can control me by threatening to isolate me, so they are attempting to use familial ties as leverage. They don't seem to realize that I've been essentially cut off from them for years. We have always had a conditional relationship. I have to take care of Jason, I have to play the part they put me in, and I have to accept their perverted definition of family devotion. I have discussed the attempted account hack with the IT security team at my firm. They are assisting me with protecting all of my gadgets and accounts connected to my job. Additionally, I've begun recording every single text, email, and voicemail. Even if I find it hard to believe, I must gather proof against my own family. The most bizarre aspect of it all? Jason's girlfriend, or ex-girlfriend, depending on their present situation, sent me an SMS. Jason has been acting strangely recently, she told me. We've never been close, but she was worried enough to contact me after hearing him make cryptic remarks about getting what's his, and teaching people lessons. This weekend, I'm going to install security cameras at my house. I may be too cautious, but I'm not taking any chances in the wake of the bank account disaster. I never imagined that I would need to defend myself against my own family, but I suppose that's where we are at the moment. $40,000 is only the beginning for those who are wondering why I don't just pay the money to make this all go away, even if I wanted to, which I don't. According to my aunt's disclosures of Jason's previous borrowing attempts, his overall debt is likely substantially larger. Helping my brother is no longer the goal of this. It's about supporting a detrimental behavior pattern that must end. Next week, I have an appointment with a financial advisor to go over all of my accounts and implement additional security measures. In order to understand my alternatives in the event that the situation worsens, I'm also thinking of talking to a lawyer about the attempted fraud, not necessarily to file charges. If something important occurs, which is likely to happen shortly given the current state of affairs, I'll provide another update. I appreciate you letting me vent, and I want to thank everyone who commented on my previous post and shared similar experiences. Knowing that I'm not the only one coping with this type of dysfunction in my family is comforting. Second update. I made the decision to speak with Jason face-to-face following the attempted bank fraud I detailed in my previous update. The events that followed were startling and yet completely expected. Jason's residence was my destination yesterday evening. It's a dilapidated establishment in a dubious area of the city. He was unshaven, had heavy circles under his eyes, and was wearing a tattered t-shirt when he eventually opened the door. His initial remarks: "You were patient enough to arrive. My attempt to hack my bank account is not an apology. No justification for the debt of $40,000. As usual, just entitlement." He gave me a disturbing response when I questioned him about the bank fraud. "Mom and Dad said that if things became severe enough, you would give in. I was merely expediting the procedure." He said it so nonchalantly, as if he were talking about the weather instead of confessing to a murder. At that point, I became aware of something troubling about his flat. There were several phones and what seemed to be credit card statements with several names on them on his coffee table. He swept them into a drawer before I could get a better look. When I understood that this might be more than simply my bank account, my stomach fell. My parents arrived just as I was ready to depart. When I got there, Jason had apparently texted them. They stormed inside his residence as if it were their own. Naturally, Mom was crying, and Dad was enraged. This led to the most heated family argument we've ever experienced. Dad began by expressing their disappointment with my self-centered actions. Mom said that they had failed as parents because I had shown myself to be so heartless. The worst part is that they really defended the bank fraud attempt when I brought it up. Mom said, "He was desperate. When you declined to assist, what option did he have?" "People sometimes make mistakes when they're backed into a corner," Dad continued. What I was hearing was unbelievable. "So, if it involves family, is identity theft acceptable?" I inquired. How did they react? No matter what, family helps family. I lost it at that point. Years of repressed annoyance were released. I explained to them how their favoritism had impacted me and how Jason became the person he is today as a result of their enabling. I cited concrete examples, such as their refusal to assist me with my college tuition while paying for Jason's unsuccessful attempts, their repeated attempts to coerce me into giving him money, and their persistent manipulation of my emotions. What did Jason say? "At least I'm not a stuck-up bonite who thinks she's better than everyone else," he grinned. In fact, Mom gave a nod of approval. I came to the important realization that they would not change at that point. Never. Money was no longer the only factor in this. This concerned a family relationship that was essentially poisonous and would never get better. I pulled out my phone and listened to the full recording of our chat. How did they look when they saw that I had proof that they were supporting bank fraud? Priceless. "This recording goes straight to the police if anything happens to my accounts again," I declared. "And I will file charges this time, Jason." Mom began to complain that I was endangering them. My father referred to me as manipulating. For the first time, Jason appeared concerned as he stood there. Dad took hold of my arm as I was about to depart and said something I will never forget. "Never expect to be welcomed in this family again if you walk out that door." I gave him a direct look and said, "That sounds more like a promise than a threat," before leaving. I had dozens of missed calls and messages when I came home. I blocked their phone numbers. I then opened my laptop and began sending an email to my entire extended family, including screenshots of threatening messages, a transcript of the taped discussion, and documentation of the bank fraud attempt. I will no longer serve as the family's scapegoat. I'm tired of being controlled. I will no longer serve as Jason's personal ATM. Above all, I have finished maintaining their secrets. It's likely that this will be my final update. I have a hunch that everyone's situation is going to drastically change soon. I'm concentrating on defending myself right now, which includes researching security systems and speaking with a lawyer about possible restraining orders. Thank you to everyone who has been keeping an eye on this situation and lending support. Your remarks gave me the courage to advocate for myself today. Third update. Everything has changed since my last update, which was a month ago. I made the decision to no longer preserve the family's secrets after the altercation at Jason's place. When I eventually revealed the truth, this is what transpired. Do you recall the email I said I was sending to the extended family? Well, I made the decision to take things a step further. I made a thorough social media post with screenshots of the attempted bank fraud, Jason's own admissions of guilt, and a recording of my parents justifying his behavior as proof. I only wanted the truth to be known. I wasn't attempting to get revenge. The reaction was tremendous. Other victims of Jason's schemes began to come forward within a few hours. According to my cousin Tim, Jason had taken out a $5,000 loan for an unfulfilled business venture. Aunt Beth said that he had persuaded her to co-sign a loan, which she is currently repaying. Even the mystery surrounding my grandmother's missing jewels from last Christmas had a likely suspect all of a sudden. However, Jason's ex-roommate made the most important disclosure when he revealed how Jason had used his identity to open many credit cards. Being too ashamed to come forward, he believed that no one would take him seriously because of my parents' perfect son. Someone in HR at the business where Jason had just had an interview saw the social media post. His past involvement with financial fraud piqued their curiosity. It goes without saying that he was not hired. My parents' standing in their social group suffered greatly. They had supported their struggling son for years while presenting themselves as the ideal parents, handling one ungrateful daughter. Everyone was aware of the reality now. After complaining to their church mates about my selfishness, they began to distance themselves from me. All of a sudden, Dad's golf friends were too busy to play every week. Mom attempted to minimize the harm by accusing me of lying, but the facts were clear. They were unable to justify their own recorded comments, the text messages, or the bank records. Their carefully constructed image fell apart. When Jason's current roommate viewed the post, it was the real game changer. When he consented to share his apartment, he was unaware of Jason's past. Jason received an eviction notice within a week. People don't want to live with someone who tries to commit bank fraud, it turns out. According to what I've been told, Jason works 3 jobs to pay off his debt. He is finally being held accountable for his acts, and his credit has been damaged. Surprisingly, my parents have stopped using social media. No more quotes about ungrateful kids or passive-aggressive posts about family values every day. Life has never been better for me. That job promotion I applied for, I understand. I've been able to concentrate on my professional and personal development without the continual drain of family turmoil and money exploitation. What a concept. I'm finally meeting someone who respects and understands boundaries. Mom and Dad no longer discuss me at all, according to the few family members I still communicate with. Put an end to guilt tripping. No more attempts at manipulation. At last, they've realized that sometimes social accountability is the result of acts having repercussions. To everyone who has to deal with toxic family members, sometimes letting the truth speak for itself is more effective than going to court. The wrong people will come out, and the right people will listen. Legal repercussions were not my family's biggest fear. Rather, it was the public discovering who they really were. By speaking up instead of keeping quiet, I not only freed myself from their control but also gave others the confidence to defend themselves. We appreciate everyone who has supported and followed this adventure. I feel really free for the first time in my life. It's acceptable when the family you were born into isn't the one you need. Now, I'm assembling my own network of people that respect integrity, accountability, and sincere concern for others. My last update will be this one. Now that the story is over, I'm prepared to begin a new chapter free from guilt, deception, and the never-ending weight of providing for others. And what do you know? No lawsuit ever could make that feel better. Am I the asshole for jumping out of the way when my niece and nephew tried to push me into a pool, causing them to fall in instead? Original post. OOP reluctantly goes to a family BBQ. OOP's nephews and nieces push people into the pool and eventually try with OP. OP sees this coming from a mile away and steps out of the way, and the kids fall in, along with the phone they were holding to record. OP's sisters got pissed for almost letting their kids drown, and because the phone is now at the bottom of the pool. They insist that OP should have let the kids push him into the pool and OP needs to apologize. OP is voted NTA update post. OP spends the first part of this post explaining that the kids were fully capable of swimming and that the party ended on a sour note. Turns out drunk BL who faceplanted had to get stitches. Sisters and Bills texted mean shit to OP and he and his wife blocked them. Mom and Dad were pissed at the text and made the sisters apologize and end this nonsense. OP thought things were over but instead gets a text from one Bill saying OP needs to reimburse them for the phone. OP refuses, sends a screenshot to his parents and says he's going no contact with sisters. In what OP says is an out-of-character move, Dad calls sisters and rips them a new one. Grandkids are no longer welcome at their place indefinitely, which messes up the free babysitting Mom provides. They are banned from the vacation house and he tells them that OOP owns that vacation house, not the parents. Sisters freak out. Sisters and husbands come over unannounced to apologize a few days later. OP and wife are out at dinner so they leave a note. OP decides no contact is the best option for now. Update 2. Well, it's been an interesting last few days. I thought the shit had hit the fan before but it was more of a fart compared to what's happened this week. TLDR. OP provides financial context here. OP's sisters think parents are dripping in money when in fact they are not. Turns out oldest sis and her fam have been living beyond their means and are in need of a loan, which parents can't give. She's also been renting out the vacation house once a month or so for the last 3 years and has been keeping the money. Another sister was aware of this and possibly has rented it out previously as well. OP's parents feel awful and let OP know. They figure that the sisters will try to convince OOP to let them rent out the house. Turns out they're right. The sisters show up and practically force their way inside OOP's house to convince them to let them use the place. They also say, quoting from OOP here, "I've been a shitty brother and that I needed to step up and plan on paying for their kids' college tuition since that's what family does." OOP calls them out on their bullshit and there's a huge blow up and the sisters leave. OP is exhausted, frustrated and drained. Update 3. TLDR. OP's parents decide they're done managing the vacation home, keeping track of who was using it, routine maintenance, etc., because sisters keep pressuring them to use it. OP feels bad for his parents because he wanted them to be able to use it regularly and now dynamics have changed, but he gets it. OP locks the gate with a heavy-duty chain and lock, resets all keypads and creates new codes, gets security cameras and has signs put up saying the area is monitored by video. OP gets a call from both husbands trying to convince him to let them use the house, like they always have. The older BL tried to go up with some friends but couldn't get in. He threatens on the phone to basically break in and acts completely entitled. Other BL sounds like he is being made to call by sister. OP obviously says no and considers selling the home. He also has no plans to initiate contact with sisters and they are not talking with him. Update 4. TLDR. OP hires a guy to look after the vacation home. Parents are continually pressured by sisters to tell OP to open up the vacation home for Thanksgiving. They refused and instead said they would organize a gathering at an Airbnb if everyone split the cost, otherwise they would host at their place. This causes an argument because the middle sister is for Airbnb, and the oldest sister doesn't have any money. So Thanksgiving will be at my parents' house but OP and wife won't be there. Parents ask OP to not sell for now as they would like to still use the place, but won't until sisters have come to terms with the new normal. Wife and OP have stayed no contact with sisters, but they have called and left messages. OP says F you Google Voice, demanding OP meets with them and work out how everyone can use the family vacation home. OP doesn't respond. OP also does not plan to turn the vacation home into an Airbnb. This part is directly from the post. My parents tell me that the oldest sister and her husband are getting out of the leases for their SUV and big-ass truck and are selling their jet skis and some other shit they've never needed. That's going to be really hard on her. She's quite the braggart and won't like being seen in something older, smaller, cheaper. My Bill's identity is very much wrapped up with his truck as well. He even has a small tattoo of the truck company's logo. Which frankly is one of the many reasons why he and I never hung out. Update 5. Things have gone to hell. I really, truly did not think anything like this would happen. Short version, my brothers-in-law broke into my vacation home and were arrested. They've been charged with breaking and entering, destruction of property and communicating threats, all Class 1 misdemeanors. I've refused to drop the charges. I might do so if I'm fully paid for the damage they caused. They were still in jail as of Saturday evening. I assume they're out by now. Editor's note. My TLDR of the next part of the post. Bills went to the vacation home and cut through the chain, damaged the gate. They messed up the front door trying to get in, ended up getting through another door and then broke into the barn. David, the guy OP hired to manage the home, called the cops. Cops didn't buy Bill's excuses that they were allowed and OP was unreachable at the moment due to spending the day with his wife's family and leaving the phones in the car. Bills were booked at the sheriff's office. Sisters freaked out but OP had them blocked. Older sister couldn't afford bail because their cards were maxed out so middle sis would have to pay for everything. OP and his wife checked their phones late on Friday on their way home and found that mom and dad, the sheriff's department and David had all called. OP called David when he got home and found out the extent of the damage. He ended Friday calling the sheriff's department and telling them it wasn't a misunderstanding and that Bills did not have his permission to be there. From OP's post, I waited until Saturday afternoon to call my folks. They were both pretty rattled about it all. My mom in particular. My sisters had browbeat them into telling me I should tell the cops it was all a mistake and that I wanted the charges dropped. I refused flat out, told them there was no way I'd do that until I spoke with an attorney and also not until I was paid in full for whatever it will cost to fix everything 100%. My mom was crying hard by the time we got off the phone, which of course made me feel like shit. My dad suggested it was time for a complete start over but also said he thought they needed to pay for the damage. I haven't gone up to the property yet. There's nothing I can do and I'll probably go nuts when I see the damage in person. The photos are bad enough. I'm hoping for tomorrow or Wednesday but my job isn't one I can just wander off from for non-emergencies. I've left messages with 2 attorney friends asking them to recommend the right lawyers to go after my sisters and BILs. I don't know what I can do exactly but I'm hoping to get restraining orders. I have all the texts they've sent me, that might help. I'm strongly considering suing them for the money they made renting the place. I don't care about the cash but it will help make them as miserable as possible. The gloves are definitely off at this point. A couple of side notes. Bills had no idea I'd hired someone to keep an eye on things or that there are cameras there now. My parents knew but hadn't told them because they knew it would just give my sisters a reason to drama up. There are signs on the property stating it's being monitored with cameras and no trespassing signs though. My wife has completely had it at this point. I don't blame her. She's been more than patient about it all, but she reached her limit and was not shy about letting me know. She told me it's up to me how I deal with this, but that she thought they all needed to be taught a hard lesson. Older BL likely won't face any repercussions at his job over this, but middle BL has a security clearance, so he might. I'm hoping that will be motivation for middle Bill to pay for the damages himself immediately. David, the caretaker, has an interesting background. I knew he was friends with some of the deputies, figured it was because they were all locals. I was wrong. He was a cop in a big city for years, was shot on duty and afterwards decided to quit and move to where his parents had retired. He has some PTSD over it all. His dog is a certified service animal and is usually with him. I know law enforcement people tend to hang together. I guess that's how they became his friend group. I don't want to see or speak with these a-holes for the rest of my life. I know this is in direct conflict with my overwhelming urge to make their lives as miserable as possible. Update 6. Didn't think I'd be doing another post this soon, but a lot has happened over the past 2 days. Short version, I think the corner has been turned on this crap. Thursday afternoon I got a courier-delivered envelope at my office. In it was a signed letter from both my brothers-in-law and a cashier's check for $5,000. In the letter they made what I have to say was a really sincere apology. Among other things, they acknowledged breaking in, acknowledged it was wrong, said the $5,000 was to pay for the damage and that they'd pay more if it cost more than that. Also said they'd stay away from the vacation home unless my wife and I specifically invited them. They also asked that I do what I could to get the charges dropped as soon as possible because they both could lose their jobs and that they'd agree to a restraining order or whatever else it took for that to happen. There was more as well, all conciliatory, but that's the gist of it. To say this was a shock is an understatement. It was, obviously, a total 180 from their past behavior. I'd already made an appointment with an attorney to see about suing my BILs over the damage and to try to get a restraining order. I called him and told him what I'd just received and he agreed to meet with me at the end of the day instead of next week. Told me not to deposit the check. We met for about 2 hours. He ended up recommending the wife and I do a settlement and mutual release agreement with all 4 of them, sisters and BILs. He said if we went after them via a lawsuit that we'd almost certainly win, but that it could take 2 years or more, there would be sizable upfront legal fees and that we might never see any money. He also said we could keep the $5,000 free and clear even if we didn't let them off the hook. He's drawing up the agreement. It won't be ready until Monday. The agreement will include what's essentially the civil equivalent of a restraining order. I'd already asked my property manager to work up a bid to get the damage repaired. I called him after the meeting and asked that he get me as close to an estimate as possible ASAP. Got that Friday. He thinks it will take around $4,000 to fix everything. Most of that is for the front door. On Friday my attorney contacted each of the BILs, told them what we were proposing and advised them to get their own lawyers. They both agreed to it. The middle BIL told him they could afford to either pay for the damages or pay for a lawyer but not both, and they figured a lawyer wouldn't make any difference given that they really had no defense for what they did. His biggest concern was if the charges could be dropped. From what I can tell, they're willing to do anything, sign anything to make this all go away. My attorney also called the DA's office on Friday to discuss dismissing the charges, got the name of the prosecutor and left them a message but has not spoken to them yet. He thinks they'll dismiss the charges because the bills are paying up and they have no priors, but then again he's not a criminal lawyer. Also said I should be prepared to drive up there Monday or Tuesday and tell the prosecutor in person that I want everything dismissed. He's also advised me to continue to be no contact with sisters and BILs especially for the next 6 months and that it will be really important to follow the terms of the agreement when it comes to future interactions with them. I'm guessing that the BIL's change of heart is due to them having figured out what's at stake for them, what it's going to cost them in legal fees and fines and so on. There's also the highly unlikely possibility that they could go to jail for up to 120 days, and as I've mentioned, one of them has a security clearance for his job that could be at risk. So this is their Hail Mary pass to keep their normal lives. This isn't a perfect resolution to the situation, but at least it will get me past the legal and financial parts of the shit show that I've been in for the past few months. I doubt I'll ever have a civil relationship with any of them ever again, and that's fine. What I want most at this point is to close this off, get on with my life and never speak to any of them again. I'm exhausted from this. Wife feels pretty much the same way. Kind of a side issue, but getting the written apology was, weirdly, a huge moment for me. I wasn't expecting that ever, but apparently it matters to me quite a bit. The money doesn't feel particularly important at this moment. I'll damn sure take it though. Also, I'm pretty certain my middle sister and her husband came up with the money. The cashier's check is from the credit union of the company he works for. Once things are signed, I plan to make one more update, probably just an edit to this post. I'm sorry for being so pedantic. Writing these posts has helped clear my head and the feedback has really helped. I truly appreciate everyone's comments, insights, and support. And I really hope none of you ever have to go through this kind of nonsense. Update 7. Tuesday morning I met with my attorney and went over the agreement. Changed a couple of minor things and he sent it to my sisters and brothers-in-law. It included a requirement that they pay my attorney's fee, about $3,000. They weren't happy about that and tried to negotiate it away, but he told them they either accept it as is or there would be no deal at all and we'd proceed with suing them for the money they got from renting out the place, wear and tear from renting it, repair costs from their break-in, emotional distress, lost income from having to deal with this, attorney fees and whatever else we could. He also told them I would push hard with the DA's office to prosecute every charge. Short version, they came in and signed. I wasn't there. I'm told it was a pretty tense environment, that the middle Beal appeared to have taken charge and that at one point he told both of my sisters to shut the hell up or he was walking away from the whole thing, making his own deal with us and the rest of them could all go to hell. They provided another cashier's check for $2,500, claiming that's all they had. It's close enough that we're going to accept it as the final payment. Attorney also told me that everyone was very cold and curt towards one another, but that they all managed to keep it together long enough to sign and left without making too big of a scene. I drove up to the vacation house early yesterday to check out the damage and meet with the DA's office. Seeing the damage made my blood boil. It was so senseless. I was so pissed that I was ready to eat the cost of repairs and do everything I could to ruin their lives. Tried walking it off, failed utterly. Ended up calling a good friend who was kind enough to stay on the phone for over an hour letting me spew and vent. He eventually got me back to focusing on the bigger picture of putting this behind me and getting on with my life. Honestly, I'm still not sure that's what I want to do, but I settled down enough to get some food in me and I felt better. After lunch I went to the DA's office, hadn't made an appointment and had to wait a while but got to meet with the assistant DA who's got the case. Short version is that since I don't want to prosecute and the BILs have already paid for the damages that they are willing to drop all the charges except trespassing, which in this case will be a Class 2 misdemeanor. The BILs will have to plead guilty and pay whatever fine the judge sets. I'm also told that if they fight the trespassing charge or ever so much as fart in public up there that it would go very poorly for them. It helped that the BILs didn't resist arrest. If they had none of the charges would have been dropped. I also went by the sheriff's office to thank them for getting there so quickly and everything. Wanted to thank the deputies personally but only spoke to the dispatch person. And I tried to meet up with David, the property manager, but couldn't get hold of him. A couple of notes. The agreement includes a no contact clause. Basically if any of them show up where my wife or I are, or the other way around, whoever got there last has to leave immediately. No contact except through attorneys or other mutually agreed upon third parties. They get to keep whatever they made from renting the vacation house, my big give, unless I have tax consequences which they will be responsible for. And we release each other from all other liabilities up through the present. There's more to it than that but those are the high points. Wife and I will sign the agreement later today. After that I can't talk about most of this but I can talk around it. I think this is my final update regarding all this nonsense but I'll respond to comments if I can. As I've said before, posting about all of this and reading folks' thoughts and responses has been really helpful and has probably been key in my being able to handle this in a relatively healthy way. So thank you all again. Update 8. Thought it would be worth an update for anyone who's interested. Unsurprisingly, my oldest sister and brother-in-law have filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy. While I don't care about what happens to them financially or otherwise, they've also managed to drag my parents into their mess, which I'm not happy about. At the start of the year my BIL's oversized customized Pride and Joy truck was repossessed. Pretty embarrassing for him I'm sure, happened at work. This was their breaking point. Without the truck they have to share a Kia my parents loaned them and they can barely fit in it with their 3 kids. Financially they're effed. They owe at least $125,000, probably more, on high-interest credit cards. They have zero equity in their house, and have a couple of personal loans that I'm pretty certain they got under false pretenses. They have loans on their jet skis, ATVs and trailers. They also owe a chunk of money from defaulting on the truck lease. They hadn't made any payments on their credit cards or loans in months and were behind on their house payments as well. They got out of the lease on my sister's massive SUV late last year. They were upside down on it as well, so had to come up with cash to do so. They also had to pay an attorney, the fine and court costs for my BIL's trespassing charge at the vacation house. And they owe my middle sister and her husband money for bail and their portion of the damages to the place. As I've mentioned before, my folks have never been financial wizards, but they have at least been generally responsible. They're retired, their home is paid off and they live off of Social Security and pensions. Altogether they get more than they spend. Minimal savings, just an emergency fund. Turns out my folks emptied out that fund, cashed out their small IRA, $20,000, and gave it to my sister. That let her catch up on the house payment and cover the negative equity on her car lease. But now literally every bit of savings my parents possessed is gone. Plus my parents have been paying for their groceries for several months and continue to pay the insurance on the car they loaned my sister. According to my dad, my sisters worked my mom for weeks to get her to fork over the money. They'd worked on both my folks at the same time for a while, but my dad flat out refused every time. Eventually mom caved. She was worried that my sister would have to move to a hovel in some backwater town and that the kids would be barefoot and eating dirt. Dad's not happy about it, and to say there's some tension between them right now is an understatement. But they'll be fine. I was pretty disappointed when my parents told me all this, but I wasn't surprised. It sucks that they emptied out their savings to help, but I kind of get it. The way the bankruptcy laws are in our state, by getting caught up on the home loan, my sister should be able to keep the house. I tried hard not to say how I felt about this, and my sisters mostly succeeded. Really, I'm way more pissed about this than I should be. The worst part for me is that my sister and BIL could now contact me and my wife without any real fear of repercussions. The only penalty the no contact agreement has is that if they violate it, we can go after them for the money they made from renting out the vacation house and related damages. Since they've filed for bankruptcy, that's now not an impediment for them. I'm hoping they'll leave us alone, but who knows. Folks also told me that my middle sister and her husband have hit a rough spot, and that he's not currently living with her and the kids. Just a guess, but I imagine he's had it with the whole family dynamic that caused this nonsense. Not directly related, but on a brighter note, I've spent 2 weekends at the mountain house since the start of the year, once with my wife and once alone. Both times there was a lot of snow. It was incredibly beautiful and relaxing. Very therapeutic. The place also has good internet service now, thanks Starlink, which is nice. Plus knowing that I can count on David, the property manager, to keep the place in shape, ready for us to visit and to help if we get snowed in, eliminates most of the stress in owning it. My folks have used it a few times as well and get along great with David. Relevant comments. Could you get a restraining order? If they start up again, I do indeed plan to get a restraining order. In fact, my wife made it clear to me she expects a very hard approach to any BS from them going forward, which I agree with, of course. I had the security cameras at our house upgraded at the start of the year just in case they come by. I also kept all their previous texts and provided screenshots to my attorney for safekeeping. If they cause any trouble at the vacation house, they're toast. The sheriff's department and DA's office have the full story and are sympathetic to our situation. $125,000 on credit cards? $125,000 is my estimate based on my sister telling my parents they were racking up at least $3,000 per month just in credit card interest. She thought it might be more. Their credit was already crap before the bankruptcy, so I'm guessing they might be paying as high as 28% interest. If so, they'd owe about $125,000. If they're paying a lower interest rate, the principal would be higher. But yeah, it's an absurd amount, and that $3,000 doesn't include all the other interest they're paying. And of course there's the principal that just sits there. On the other hand, I'm told they had a great time going to Disney World for a week, so there's that. Middle Bill. Younger Bill seems to be more decent than I've given him credit for in the past. I'll admit to a bit of myopia. For years I've seen the four of them and their kids as just one mass of inconvenient people I have nothing in common with but can't avoid. But he seems to have hit his limit and made some changes. Hope it works out for him and that he pulls my sister in the right direction. How sisters got so entitled. My sisters and I weren't raised to be like they are. When I was young, they weren't any more self-entitled than any other teenagers. We all worked crappy teenage jobs, didn't get spoiled. It was really a very standard suburban upbringing. We weren't super close, but we weren't enemies. Somewhere along the line, after going off to college, they changed for the worse. I guess it could be worse. They could have become drug addicts or militant vegan volcano worshippers or whatever. But they sure became people I don't want to be around. And yes, the pool incident was the spark for the meltdown, but the fuel had been accumulating for years. It would have come out at some point that she was renting the house out on the sly, and things would have gone to hell then, just like they did now. Update 9. There's been a fair number of requests for an update, and considering it's coming up on the 1-year anniversary of the pool incident, I thought I'd post one. My folks worked through Mom giving my oldest sister her IRA and their emergency fund. Altogether, Mom gave her $45,000. According to Dad, once Mom realized how much she'd been manipulated, she got as mad and upset as he'd ever seen her. I think she had a moment of clarity. She and Dad ended up calling my sisters on a 3-way call, and according to Dad, it went south pretty quickly. Sisters were gaslighting them, Mom lost her cool and ended up ripping into them hard. There were lots of tears and eventually both sisters hung up. Mom really just wanted both sisters to acknowledge that they'd put her and Dad in a risky financial situation. Typical blow-up, I guess, but not the kind of thing that happens in our family. The next morning my dad called my older sister and told her he'd be picking up the car they'd loaned her. She tried to argue, but he told her it wasn't up for discussion. He got a neighbor friend to take him to her house as soon as he hung up and drove it home without talking to her. Sister called and went off on him, said lots of nasty stuff, which of course hurt him. But at least they have the car back. Dad also told me something that left me dumbfounded. For the last 17 years they were giving both sisters a grocery allowance that was up to $500 per month. What the effing F? I'd thought I had a pretty good handle on where their money was going, but clearly I was wrong. This started back when I was going to graduate school and living at home. My sisters asked for the money because they thought it wasn't fair that I was living at home rent-free, and then it just never ended. In any case, my parents cut them off. Unsurprisingly, my sisters weren't happy about it. Who the hell gets an allowance from their parents when they're in their 40s? Because of all this, my folks and sisters quit talking for a while. Don't know if they've resolved everything, but they appear to be on speaking terms again, though my folks aren't having them or the kids over. I'm in don't ask mode, it's their business. My folks are using the vacation home fairly regularly. Currently they're there for a 2-week stay and will probably make it 3. Unfortunately, my wife and I haven't spent any time there lately other than me having made a couple of day trips to check on it and drop off some supplies. The property manager I hired, David, is still taking good care of the place. Side note, middle sister told my mom that the oldest sister had been making over $6,000 per month renting the house out and that it had been going on for nearly 3 years. Pretty certain she didn't declare the income, so that's like grossing $8,000 to $9,000 per month. I will forever find that galling. Oldest sister and BIL still have their house. My attorney checked up on their bankruptcy case. The court converted it from Chapter 7 to Chapter 13, which I believe means they have to pay back a lot more of their debts. Middle sister and her husband are still separated. I don't know if my middle Bill has had any issues with his security clearance because of breaking into the house. I do know he's still with the same big defense company. At my parents' request, I've been working on putting their house into a trust. They want me to manage their affairs as they get older and keep the house safe from my sisters. I'm working with an attorney, but it's not done yet. Folks have asked me to be the trustee and have also given me full power of attorney. The best part about the last few months is that my sisters, Bills, have left us alone and have stayed away from the vacation home. Wife and I are really happy to be back to our normal lives. Hope everyone else's lives are going great. Update 10, December 14th, 2024. Some folks have asked for an update. Here you go. In August, my attorney let me know he'd received a letter for me from my middle brother-in-law. This was the first contact from any of my sisters or their husbands since they'd been arrested. It was a long letter, had a sincere apology, and a lot of information he thought I should know. Biggest thing was that he and my sister are divorced, not separated. He moved out and filed for divorce right after we made the settlement agreement. He and my middle sister kept it quiet until it was done. Their house sold in June and she's moved to an apartment. He told me that his being arrested last year, along with my other BIL, for breaking into the vacation house could have cost him his job and killed his career, and that it was a huge moment of clarity. He said that the dynamic between the 4 of them, my sisters, him and my oldest sister's husband, had become totally toxic, that they are all borderline alcoholics or worse, and that he had to get away from that environment. He no longer speaks to my oldest sister or her husband. He also asked if he, my dad, and I could meet and have an extended conversation, as there were things he needed to talk about in person. Frankly, I was unenthused, but my wife thought it was worth doing. I asked my dad if he was interested. He was, so I relayed a response to now ex-Bill through my attorney and we met over lunch. We talked for over 2 hours. It was pretty exhausting. Ex-Bill looked better than I'd seen him in, well, forever. He's quit drinking, is in therapy, has lost a lot of weight and looked fit. He was apologetic about all the BS he'd been involved in and apologized to my dad for hiding the divorce. Told us therapy is really helping him. Asked me if the $5,000 he'd sent covered all the damage to the vacation house. I told him it had, and thanked me for talking to the county prosecutor. Said he is strongly considering transferring to a new project that would have him living overseas for the next few years, that he really needed to reset his life, but he was trying to balance his mental health against not being part of his kids' lives every day. Ex-Bill also hit us with what for me was quite the WTF. Apparently my sisters have hated me since before I was born, but have always hidden it from the rest of us. They liked things better when there were just the 2 of them. He said when they drank, which was whenever they were together, My sisters would often bitch about me being the favorite child, how my folks gave me more opportunities than they had, how my doing well was a result of that, and that I didn't deserve my success. None of that made any sense to me or my dad. All three of us went to the same public schools, had dumb part-time jobs, etc. My folks paid for 100% of their college, not mine. I got a full scholarship. I was pretty shocked by this, but my dad was literally speechless. Dad eventually said he had no clue they felt that way as kids and that he and Mom had never favored any of us. He's still having a hard time with this. Personally, I'm embarrassed that I was clueless about it all my life. But it does explain a lot. Bill warned us that my sisters and remaining BIL intended to put on a full court press to alienate my folks from my wife and me. They also planned to keep the grandkids away from my folks to pressure them. He said that they're still 1000% convinced that my folks are sitting on a ton of money, they want some of it ASAP and are sure I'd stop my folks from giving them anything. That got a laugh out of my dad because he and Mom simply don't have any real money. They do have their house, of course. Bill also told us that he and my middle sister had rented out the vacation house a total of 6 times over the years. He offered to pay me what they'd made. I declined and told him it was in the past. He also told us my older sister Bill had never declared the income from renting out the vacation house. He did. He didn't want to get in trouble with the IRS. Both my dad and I spoke with Bill separately for a few minutes. Don't know what they talked about. I thanked him for his apology and for making things right financially. Also wished him well and told him I'd be willing to talk with him again down the road. Don't think that's going to happen. I probably could have been more forgiving, but I think he appreciated me not bullshitting him by acting like all this crap hasn't affected my wife and me. There was more, but it's less important, and this is too long as it is. After Bill left, I asked my dad if he, Mom and I could sit down and talk about all this. I didn't mean immediately, but that's how he took it. He called Mom and let her know I was coming over, so I rolled with it. She was pretty hurt by my sister's plans to ruin her and Dad's relationship with me and my wife and to use the grandkids as pawns. She cried a lot and wanted to confront them immediately. Dad got her to put a pin in that for a while. Mom was also dumbfounded about me supposedly being the favorite child. She feels like they were actually more strict with me because I had a hard curfew and my sisters didn't. To be honest, I barely remember that. It was 25 years ago. A couple of side notes. Middle sister eventually told our folks she's divorced. She's currently living off child support and her half of the home sale. Supposedly she's trying to find a job. My parents have gone low contact with both sisters. No idea how permanent that is, but Mom seems like she's completely had it with them for the foreseeable future. They're spending a lot of time at the vacation house. We're up there over a month at one point. Bill found my Reddit posts. He's not terribly happy about them but feels they're more or less accurate, though obviously he found them slanted towards my point of view. He disagreed that he's boring but said to be fair that he finds me boring as well. I can live with that. Our worlds don't have much overlap except my sister. We got the trust set up for my parents' house. I'm the trustee. All this has been emotionally draining for me. I decided it would be a good idea for me to see a therapist again. I've seen one in the past, mainly for stress-related issues. I've been doing so for a while and it's definitely helpful. Therapist tells me my decision to stay no contact with my siblings is healthy for now but also wants me to keep an open mind down the road. My family treats me like a doormat. Now, they are planning a cruise without me and assuming I'd stay behind to babysit their kids. They expected me to watch the kids while they had a good time, even though I, 25F, was not invited to the family cruise. Reddit, hello? Usually, I just read posts and marvel how families can be so cruel to one another. As it happens, I just received a story from my own family that is worth sharing. I need some perspective since for the past week, this has been weighing heavily on my chest. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm a 25-year-old single software developer for a big tech business in Seattle, and it seems like I've been made the family doormat. I got what most people would call a dream job 3 years ago after graduating from college. I've been advancing my career consistently, my work is rewarding and difficult, and my team respects me. However, in my family, I'm simply the one who can be counted on, the person who others turn to when they need assistance, particularly with childcare. Please understand that I adore my nieces and nephews. I've always been available for last-minute babysitting, crises, or any time someone needs a helping hand. Perhaps I erred by being overly approachable and eager to assist. The backstory is as follows. After 40 years of teaching, my 65-year-old Aunt Jean is retiring. She is essentially the matriarch of our family, keeping everyone in touch. She keeps track of all the birthdays, plans every holiday meal, and even sends care packages to the younger cousins when they attend college. She is what keeps us all together. She was the one who gave me care packages filled with my favorite snacks and handwritten encouraging letters during finals week when I was in college. She even assisted me in getting ready for my very first job interview. Her retirement is obviously a huge event, and I was thrilled to join in the celebration. Or was, until I learned that I would not be participating. Everything began last week. I had just completed a particularly difficult project at work that involved coordinating a crucial system update and staying late to fulfill deadlines. Despite my fatigue, I continued to have dinner with my family once a week. Since I moved into my own apartment, these dinners have become a ritual, and even when I'm really busy with work, I hardly ever miss one. I brought Mom's favorite bottle of wine when I got to my folks' place. It was an ordinary evening. My sister Rachel, 32 degrees Fahrenheit, looking through her phone, my dad half watching a sporting event on TV, and my mom, 55 degrees Fahrenheit, worrying about what to make. Her 2-year-old was on the floor playing with blocks and would sometimes call out to everyone who passed. We were discussing a variety of topics, including Rachel's toddler's most recent developmental milestone, my most recent professional endeavor, and the customary family rumors. I then asked jokingly if anyone had any suggestions for Aunt Jean's retirement present. I had been considering getting her a unique present, perhaps organizing a collective present with the family. At that moment, Rachel said, "Oh, we're giving her a group gift on the cruise," without even raising her head from her phone. I stopped in the middle of my sentence. What kind of cruise? At first, I believed I had misheard her. I would be aware of any scheduled family vacation, wouldn't I? I mean, I attend every birthday party, holiday celebration, and family get-together. I chuckled uneasily and inquired about her topic. She raised her head, obviously perplexed that I was perplexed. "We've been organizing the cruise for months, you know." As if I were somehow to blame for not knowing about something that no one had thought to tell me, Rachel added, "All the adults in the family are going." I asked my mother for an explanation. When she realizes she's done something wrong but doesn't want to acknowledge it, she gives me this uneasy smile. She clarified, "It's a cruise to celebrate your aunt's retirement, with a few days spent in Hawaii." I had the impression that I was in a strange prank show at the time. I was in the dark about this elaborate excursion, while everyone else was aware of it. Suddenly, the space felt too warm and cramped. My heart was pounding as I struggled to comprehend what was going on. My mother gave me a tense little laugh when I inquired why I hadn't been informed, and then she said, "Well, we thought you'd be more help staying back." "Remaining behind? What can you help with?" I asked, attempting to speak steadily. I had the ideal opportunity to jump in as if it were the most apparent thing in the world when my cousin Madison, 30 degrees Fahrenheit, entered the room with her twins. "The children. It just made sense for you to stay and watch them since you get along so well with them. Let me explain. Madison and Rachel have 4 children under the age of 4. Madison's twins, who are just over a year old, and Rachel's 3 and 2-year-old children. They had somehow determined that I would be more than happy to stay behind and monitor them all without even consulting me. I forgot about my dinner and just stared at them in shock. "So you organized this entire trip without inviting me and just thought I'd be fine staying home to watch the kids?" Rachel finally put her phone down and shrugged. "Yes, indeed. You don't have children or anything that might bind you, and you're always so dependable. It simply made sense." "Made sense to whom?" I looked at my mother as I inquired, hoping for an explanation that wouldn't make me seem like a total afterthought. "We didn't mean to leave you out, honey," she added, smiling weakly at me. "We simply assumed you would comprehend. You have always been the one in charge." The word responsible was like a kick to the face. I've heard that a lot throughout my life, including when I stayed home to assist with family gatherings rather than going out with friends, when I rearranged my college schedule to accommodate Rachel's firstborn, and when I utilized my vacation time to support Madison following her challenging twin pregnancy. When someone needs assistance, I've always been the one to step up. Yes, I have assisted with school pickups, kept the kids during crises, and even filled in for Rachel when she had work-related issues. Rachel had a late meeting last month, so I took a half-day off work to pick up her children from daycare. After the twins began to crawl, I spent 3 weekends the previous month assisting Madison with organizing her home. However, this was really different. They made decisions for me as if my time, my desires, and my life didn't matter. They didn't even have the grace to ask. My mother attempted to patch things up by promising to bring me a memento, as if that would somehow make up for my exclusion. She promised to purchase you a lovely souvenir from Hawaii, as though it would make up for being treated like the family's unpaid babysitter. Meanwhile, Rachel pretended that I was exaggerating. "You wouldn't really like the cruise anyhow. I take it that you don't like big crowds? Do you recall how uneasy you felt at Cousin Katie's wedding?" "Pardon me, As I spoke, I could feel my annoyance building. They were now determining what I would and wouldn't like. I was recuperating from the flu when that wedding took place 5 years ago. However, it seems that one incident had turned into a justification for them to keep me out of family gatherings. I sat there attempting to take it all in. This was intentional, not merely an oversight. They all know that I don't use Facebook, so I wasn't a part of the private Facebook group where they had been organizing this for months. They could have called, texted, or even casually brought it up at any of the numerous family get-togethers we've had, but they chose not to. My mother attempted to sidestep my comments about how painful it was to be left out. We had no intention of upsetting you. It was simply useful, sensible for them. Soon after, I departed because I was too upset to continue the conversation. It was a blur on the way home. Recollections of all the times I had sacrificed everything for them, put their needs ahead of my own, and dropped everything to aid them kept coming back to me, making it difficult for me to concentrate on the road. However, as the days went by, the rage evolved into something more profound. It was more than just the journey. It has to do with how my family perceives me. I don't have any wants, goals, or desires of my own. Simply said, I'm the reliable one, the helper, and the person they can rely on to make sacrifices when it suits them. I've mentally rehearsed the exchange numerous times. I recalled spending the entire night with Rachel during the colic episode of her first child. How I assisted Madison in her quest for strollers and car seats that are suitable for twins. How I've never missed a child's birthday celebration or school function. As I gave it more attention, I came to the conclusion that this wasn't an isolated incident. They have always treated me in this manner. I didn't even realize how frequently my family took advantage of me because I was so ready to support and assist them. But I'm done this time. I'm not sure how I'll deal with this in the future, but I'm definitely not going to stay behind to watch the kids. Not now. Reddit, what are your thoughts? Have you ever found yourself in a comparable circumstance? I'll keep you informed as events develop. First update. Hello everyone. I appreciate all of your encouraging remarks in my earlier post. In the last few days, a lot has transpired, and I must disclose how things have gotten out of hand. I made the decision to make one final attempt to get on the trip after reading your remarks. In the hopes that we could arrange something, I texted my sister Rachel to inquire about going on the trip. Sorry, the cruise is sold out, was her irate reply. We made our reservation months ago, and adding individuals now is not possible. I informed her that I would be prepared to reserve my own cabin independently, even if it meant traveling to Hawaii on my own to meet them there or staying on a different deck. Even though I was still upset over being left out, I was making a sincere effort to be understanding. What did she say? Well, you would have to arrange childcare first if you did come. Everything has already been planned, presuming you will monitor the children. It dawned on me then that they never intended to include me. The explanation about daycare was simply that, an excuse. They had already determined that I would always be the babysitter in this household. I therefore made a choice. I had previously asked for time off for what they believed to be babysitting responsibilities. I choose to take the time off for myself rather than cancel it. A coworker recommended this lovely mountain cabin rental, which I found. It's quiet, remote, has hiking trails, and a hot tub with a view of a valley. I made the reservation right away, packed my things, and departed without informing anyone of my destination. Everything I needed was in the cabin. Just the sound of nature and complete solitude. No Wi-Fi, no cell service until in an emergency. Naturally, my phone was overflowing with texts the morning of their cruise departure before I finally shut it off. Mom. In an hour, we're heading out. When are we able to drop off the children? Rachel. Hey, we're taking the car seats to your apartment. Be prepared. Are you ignoring us? Asked Madison. We have to stick to our timetable, therefore this isn't humorous. Mom. Please answer your phone, honey, she said once again. Everyone is waiting. Then the messages became more obscene. Rachel. It's unbelievable how self-centered you are. Our flight is going to be delayed. Madison. This is utterly careless. We had faith in you. I raised you better than this, said Mom. The finest aspect? I had never really received confirmation from them that I would be watching the children. They simply believed that since I've always done it, I would. I'm currently sitting in this serene cottage and taking in the mountain sunset. I feel free for the first time in years, no obligations, no expectations, no last-minute crises to deal with. However, I am aware that this calm is fleeting. I haven't turned on my phone yet, and I can only picture the drama that will be there when I do. I feel bad for finally standing up for myself and upsetting the family dynamic, not for the children, whose care is ultimately the parents' duty. One commenter on my previous piece wrote, "They're not angry because you said no. And it's still on my mind." That struck close to home. They're upset because they can no longer control you. Am I mistaken for prioritizing myself at last? At the very least, should I have informed them that I wouldn't be available? It felt like the only way to let them know I'm serious after years of being taken for granted, even though I realize it wasn't the most mature thing to do. For the next week, I'll be at the cabin. I suppose I'll have to deal with whatever happens after that. Reddit, I appreciate you letting me vent. After I return and have addressed the fallout, I will provide another update. Second update. Hello, Reddit. It took me a while to take in everything that had transpired since my last update. I'm in dire need of some outside insight because things have become worse. Do you recall that quiet cabin I told you about? Those 7 days changed my life. I read books I had been intending to read for years in the afternoons, hiked misty trails in the mornings, and soaked in the hot tub under the stars at night. I felt what it was like to not be at someone's mercy for the first time in my adult life. I found myself thinking back on my relationship with my family while I was there. Rachel needed assistance moving houses last December, so I had to postpone a big certification exam that would have furthered my profession. That weekend, she said, no one else could help her. My siblings gave me plain gift cards, saying they were too busy to shop properly, while I used my entire Christmas bonus the month before to buy presents for all the kids. Madison argued that she had no one else to care for the twins, so I was unable to attend my closest friend's bachelorette party earlier last year. The pattern remained constant. Their demands came first, then mine. But when I got home, the real drama began. Do you recall how I shut down my phone? I had hundreds of voicemails, more than 100 text messages, and 47 missed calls waiting for me. It included everything from threats to guilt tripping. Do you realize we could have called the police for child abandonment? Was the most memorable message from my cousin Madison. They were meant to be your responsibility. What I was reading was unbelievable. You never agreed to watch children, so how can you leave them? I wanted to handle this ridiculous threat, so I contacted her back right away. When she answered, I exclaimed, "You can't be serious. If someone refuses to accept a responsibility, you cannot report them for it." She gave a frightening reaction. "You were the reason we had to postpone our entire trip. Are you aware of the amount of money we lost? You were meant to be with the children." "Assumed to be? By whom?" I retorted. "I was never asked. You all made the decision for me." She continued talking about my responsibilities to my family and how I had failed them. She then revealed yet another shocking revelation. "I've already spoken with my legal pal. What you did can be regarded as careless." I lost it at that point. "Your lawyer buddy needs to advise you that before accusing someone of ignoring a duty, you must obtain their real consent. I have no formal authority to make medical choices for your children, and my apartment isn't even child-proofed. Have you considered that?" She ended the call. Then Rachel's flurry of messages arrived. It seems that she was so stressed that she was only able to enjoy half of the cruise and had to leave her children with a neighbor. She wrote, "You've ruined Aunt Jean's retirement celebration completely. You chose to be selfish, which affected everyone's trip. All of this came at an especially difficult time because, just last month, none of my family members were available to drive me home from a minor medical procedure. Madison was preoccupied with her daily schedule, and Rachel had an important hair appointment. In the end, I had to pay for a ride-sharing service. Although more subdued, my mother's strategy was just as deceptive. Presumably assuming I couldn't avoid her at work, she called me. Her voice was brimming with disappointment as she started, "Your sister had to cut her trip short. Madison's non-refundable reservations cost them hundreds of dollars. Do you truly want to be this person?" I inhaled deeply before answering. "Mom, is this more about what you all want me to be or about what I want to be?" "What is the intended meaning of that?" she inquired. "It indicates that I'm sick of being used as the family's unpaid babysitter. None of you even take into consideration the fact that I have my own life, work, and aspirations." She emphasized, "We are family. Families support one another. Mom, help is something that is freely given. You're referring to obligation here. In addition, when was the last time I received assistance from any member of this family?" The ensuing stillness was telling. The intriguing part, though, is that my sister chose to make this public. On Facebook, she has been making ambiguous and hostile status updates about toxic family members and others who don't respect family values. The irony is that our extended family members are making comments like, "Some people forget where they came from," and "blood is thicker than water." I was initially turned away from the family cruise by these same individuals. My cousin even went so far as to email me a detailed list of all the fees they incurred due to my selfish behavior, including additional daycare charges, travel changes, and cruise tickets. She is requesting that I pay them back because, presumably, their careless planning has made me financially liable. A friend of mine who is a legal, not simply a buddy who knows a lawyer, burst out laughing when I showed her these messages. She asserted, "They cannot force you to pay for plans you never accepted. None of this operates that way." I've learned a valuable lesson from the entire situation. This goes beyond childcare or a vacation. It involves years of abusing my kindness and using my time and effort as a resource to which they are legally entitled. I've always had some emergency that needed my attention whenever I've attempted to plan for myself. Rachel had joined a book club, so last spring when I wanted to take a photography class, I ended up spending those evenings watching the kids. This summer, Madison needed assistance with the twins when her husband was gone on business, so I had to postpone our planned weekend getaway with friends. To help me deal with all of this, I've started going to a therapist. She noted that my family's response, the threats, the humiliation in front of others, and the financial demands, are all indications that someone they're used to controlling is losing control. Aunt Jean has been the sole bright point in all of this. I was moved to tears by her remarks when she called me yesterday. "I had no idea they excluded you like this. I would have stopped it right away if I had known. Family isn't meant to be like this." However, even her encouragement cannot make up for the hurt I feel when I realize how my family truly views me. I'm their safety net, their backup plan, and their free babysitting service, not their sister, daughter, or cousin. Going forward, I know I must establish clear boundaries, but I'm having trouble figuring out what those boundaries should entail. There's a part of me that wants to stop communicating altogether, at least temporarily. Even thinking about that makes another area feel bad. Reddit, what are your thoughts? With family members that don't even grasp the idea of boundaries, how can you set them? Have any of you had a similar situation? Third update. This will be my last update on the situation. Reddit. In light of the trip and the turmoil that followed, I've had to make some tough but essential choices regarding my relationship with my family going forward. These last few weeks have been life-changing. Now that I'm not always on call for family problems, my professional life has dramatically transformed. I am now in charge of a significant project. Last week, my manager even took me aside and remarked, "You seem like a completely different person. Your energy and focus have significantly increased." Until they were gone, I was unaware of how much my family responsibilities were impeding my career. I finally had the chat I had been dreading last night. I gave my mother a call. Since I still adore her in spite of everything, I knew she would be the most difficult to deal with. However, love is insufficient to excuse their treatment of me. Her voice was instantly eager as she responded. "I'm so happy you phoned, honey. Let's move on from this, shall we? I want to stop fighting now." I said in a firm voice, "Mom, this isn't a fight. This is my way of telling you that I need a lot of space." "What is meant by that?" Her voice changed from one of hope to one of worry. "It implies that I can't continue in this manner. I can't be a part of a family that doesn't respect me, even though I love you. Whenever I attempt to defend myself, I encounter manipulation, accusations, and guilt tripping." A few weeks ago, I would have been devastated when she began to cry. "So what? Are you simply going to leave me? From your sister? From everybody?" "Yes, if that's what it takes to keep my peace." From there, the discussion took a turn for the worse. She employed all of her strategies, including money manipulation, remember who helped with your first apartment deposit, guilt about the children, they ask about their aunt every day, and even bringing up dad's health. This stress isn't good for his heart. The most painful part was when she mentioned my early years. She said, "I gave up everything for you. To raise you, I put my career on hold." I didn't miss the irony of her exploiting her own decisions to blame me for mine. But I held my ground for the first time. I clarified that although I would continue to send birthday cards to the children, I would require total separation from the family's adults for the foreseeable future. "What is the foreseeable future duration?" she insisted. "For however long it takes for me to recover and for everyone to realize that I'm more than just the family's babysitter." She ended the call. Instead of feeling sad as I had anticipated, I felt lighter. I adopted a more straightforward strategy with my sister and cousin. I disabled their social media profiles and phone numbers. I went through all of the family group conversations on my phone and unsubscribed. In addition to unfollowing them on social media, I modified my email filters so that their messages are sent to a different folder that I may review whenever I'm ready. There has been a noticeable shift in my day-to-day existence. I used to be so worried about missing an emergency call from my sister or cousin that I would continuously check my phone. My phone isn't tied to incessant demands from my family anymore. It's just a phone. I've begun taking back my weekends. I joined a local hiking club last Saturday to tackle a strenuous trail that I've always wanted to experience. I spent 6 hours going to a stunning top with like-minded individuals rather than watching my nieces and nephews. Next weekend, we intend to go hiking again. The class I mentioned on photography? Everything is going remarkably well. I have a natural eye for composition, according to my instructor, and I'm already organizing a picture show with several of my classmates for the spring of next year. When I was at everyone's mercy, I would never have had the chance to take advantage of these kinds of possibilities. Additionally, I've resumed dating, which was previously nearly difficult. It's incredible how much more appealing you seem to possible partners when you don't have to keep postponing arrangements to deal with family crises. Aunt Jean is the only person I continue to communicate with. She confirmed everything I've been feeling when she contacted me this morning. She added that she had experienced a similar situation with her own sister years prior, which helped me feel less alone in this choice. Walking away from people who don't value you, even if they are family, is sometimes the strongest thing you can do. I've learned from my therapist that this is about taking back my identity, not just about establishing boundaries. I've spent so much time being the family helper, the responsible one, and the dependable one. Now, I'm free to discover who I am without those titles. Yes, there are times when I miss them, like when I walk past my niece's favorite park or see something that would make them laugh. The cruise situation, however, comes to mind, as they were prepared to deny me a family celebration while still requiring me to give up my time for their convenience. Before, I never felt comfortable starting a 5-year plan for myself. I'm considering working part-time while pursuing my master's degree. My manager is very supportive of the tuition reimbursement program offered by my company. In addition, I'm saving for that springtime vacation to Europe by myself, which would not have been feasible when I was continuously devoting my time and resources to family responsibilities. My mental health has changed in the most unexpected way. I no longer experience the same level of continual anxiousness. I eat healthier, sleep better, and have even begun working out on a regular basis. You have an incredible amount of energy when you're not always running other people's lives. In response to inquiries in my previous post, I can confirm that I am still employed and have accepted a team lead position on a new project. My coworkers have seen how I've changed. You smile more now, one of them remarked. I was unaware of how obvious my attention had been to other people. Cutting off my family in this way may seem harsh to some of you. Perhaps I am. However, this seems to be the only option after years of being neglected, having my needs and wants disregarded, and being treated more like a service than a human being. I have no idea what the future will bring. They might realize why I had to do this at some point. They might not. However, I'm prioritizing myself for the first time in my adult life, and it feels good. I appreciate all of your help along the way, Reddit. Your feedback and personal stories gave me the courage to make this choice. I'm ready to conclude this chapter and concentrate on creating my own novel, so this will be my final update. My parents chose my brother's award over visiting me after a car crash. Now they want my savings to bail him out of a fraud scandal. I refused. About 2 weeks ago, I, 32F, was involved in a horrific car accident. Another automobile struck me from the side as I was making my way home from work. The force of the impact caused my automobile to overturn. I was later told by the paramedics that I was fortunate to be alive. I ultimately needed emergency surgery due to internal bleeding, 2 cracked ribs, and a damaged leg. After the procedure, I stayed in the hospital for a week to recuperate and try to make sense of things. It was difficult to be in the hospital, both mentally and physically. All I wanted was for my parents to come see me as soon as I woke up. I assumed that as soon as they learned about the accident, they would rush over. Even though I didn't anticipate them staying the entire time, I would have been so grateful for a visit. Rather, they were absent for days. I waited for them to stop by or at least give me a call, but they didn't show up. Before I even received a text from them, I believe it was 4 days. To answer your question, my parents were told what had transpired. The hospital informed me that they had contacted them several times and that they are my emergency contacts. A day following my admission, the hospital was able to contact my parents, but the nurses reported that they appeared unconcerned about the situation. That obviously upset me a lot, but I attempted to explain it away by saying that perhaps they were too busy or that something else had come up. Fortunately, my phone was still with me because my possessions survived the collision. Every day, at intervals of 5 to 6 hours, I texted my parents, but I never heard back. In the hospital, every day was a nightmare. I attempted to give my parents a lot of wiggle room because I really wanted to see people I knew, but it became more difficult every hour. Fortunately, I wasn't entirely alone because my pals, who reside in other states, were able to get in touch with some family members who live nearby. A family acquaintance came to visit me on the 6th day in the hospital and remarked in passing how wonderful it was that my brother was receiving recognition for his efforts at an award ceremony. I didn't know what she was discussing. She filled me in, but she appeared perplexed that I didn't know. As it happens, my parents didn't come to see me. Instead, they were at my brother's award ceremony. They were aware that I was in the hospital, but instead of helping me through a difficult period, they decided to attend my brother's special occasion. They were so busy getting ready for his big event that they had taken so long to get in touch with me. They were more concerned with their perception of his ceremony than with their daughter's injury. Let me be clear before anyone accuses me of jealously admiring my brother. I don't find it hard to see why they would be proud of him. I am aware that he is gifted and has put a lot of effort into all that he has accomplished. He has always been the golden child, which is the problem. Since we were little, he has received nothing but acclaim for everything he does, while I have largely gone unnoticed. He currently works for a large corporation and is really successful, therefore this award meant a lot to him. However, I was actually convalescing from surgery. A visit or even a phone call to check on me would have been the very least they could have done. I only wanted my parents to be concerned about me, and that was about all I was asking for. They didn't even blink an eyelash when I could have died that day. I was angry and humiliated. I attempted, but was unable, to explain my parents' actions. I then made the decision to contact them and let them know how offended I was. I texted them to express my disbelief that they prioritized my brother's prize over my well-being. I expressed my pain at them not even checking in on me. I didn't have to wait long for an answer for the first time since the accident, and to be honest, I wish they hadn't responded. Their words simply made me feel worse. At first, they attempted to defend their behavior by claiming that they couldn't miss my brother's award because it was a once-in-a-lifetime accomplishment. I informed them that if they had only taken the time to come see me sooner, they wouldn't have missed the event at all. After a while, they gave up trying to argue with me and told me that it was pointless to waste time coming to see me while my brother was out there making the family proud. That hurt more than words can express. It seemed like they only considered me as an afterthought. I wish I could say that their behavior astonished me, but it has always been like this. My brother was perfect as a child. Every action he took was praised. Every accomplishment he made, whether it was a scholarship, a fancy job, or perfect grades, was celebrated. In the meantime, I was constantly in the background. It was never good enough, even when I performed well. Every error I made was viewed as a disaster, and I never received the same level of help. I had the impression that they had already determined I was a failure and that nothing I did would change their thoughts. A week after my brother's award ceremony, my parents unexpectedly arrived at the hospital. I was initially perplexed because, following our last talk, I had given up on contacting them. I knew my parents well enough to understand that they weren't worried when they came to see me. They arrived with phony smiles on their faces and bouquets in their hands. They made an effort to strike up a conversation about how I was doing, but it was obvious that their thoughts were elsewhere. I advised them to just say what was on their mind because I could tell that whatever they were thinking about was going to irritate me. The fact that they showed so little concern for my survival was offensive enough. I didn't need their phony pity. I didn't have to exert much effort. When my mother learned that my brother had been arrested for fraud at his company, she burst into tears. It turned out that my brother was at the heart of a huge fraud scheme that was discovered by the corporation he worked for. He had been directing funds into his personal investments by falsifying the company's accounts. Following an internal investigation, everything was turned over to the police, and he was apprehended after a coworker alerted the superiors. He is currently being charged with major offenses like wire fraud, forgery, and embezzlement. My parents had apparently already spent a large portion of their cash on hiring attorneys for him. They came to me because they didn't have enough money left to pay his bail. They asked me to utilize the money I had saved up from my work as a project manager at an IT business to help him out. Additionally, they asked whether I knew anyone who could help in any manner or pull some strings. I had the impression that I was merely a tool to clean up my brother's mess, not even their daughter. I continued to experience mental and physical pain. It was unbelievable to me that they would turn to me for assistance after everything. It was like being slapped across the face. When I was laying in a hospital bed after surgery, afraid and alone, they didn't give a damn. But now that their favorite child was in danger, they needed me. I felt bad about it. Perhaps I ought to have assisted for the benefit of my family. The other side of me, though, was angry. The same brother who has always had everything handed to him, Why should I save him? My parents have always protected him, so he has never experienced any repercussions. Now, they expect me to do the same. I informed them that I would not assist. I said that even if I did have the money, I wouldn't feel obligated to help him out. I made it obvious who they cared about more and reminded them that they hadn't even come to see me yet. They insisted that I was being self-centered and that families should be together. I couldn't get myself to care, even though they said I would regret not helping my brother. To be honest, my brother has always taken precedence over me. I was never enough for them, no matter how hard I tried. They wanted me to simply forget all the times they disregarded me, left me out, and made me feel unimportant now that they needed something from me. I felt in control of the situation for the first time in my life, and I wasn't going to let that go. I'm laying in my hospital bed right now, feeling a mixture of anger and remorse. Since I said no, my parents haven't spoken to me, and I know they're upset, but I simply can't bring myself to care any longer. I'm done trying to gain their approval. I've wasted too much time. AITA for standing up to my parents after everything they've done to me and not helping my brother. They keep repeating that family should always remain together, therefore I feel like I might be the villain. However, the way they have treated me throughout my life, and particularly now, is something I simply cannot get over. I feel like I've had enough, but I'm not sure what to do. First update. Hello everybody, I wanted to express my gratitude for your support of my initial article. I was able to maintain my position because of that. Although I didn't anticipate updating so quickly, a lot has transpired since then. I was eventually released from the hospital a few days after my parents arrived. I can walk, but my leg fracture requires crutches, and breathing is still difficult as my ribs heal. Going home, finding some serenity, and escaping the turmoil were all things I was looking forward to. The moment I arrived at my apartment, that hope was dashed. I knew things wouldn't go well as soon as I spotted my folks, who were waiting for me just outside my door. They must have called the hospital to find out the precise time of my discharge because I hadn't told them. They wasted no time at all. They began hammering me before I could even remove my keys. They were incensed and informed me that by not helping my brother, I had gone too far. It's the most irate I've ever seen them. They seemed more unhappy with me for refusing than they were with my brother's deception. They talked endlessly about how family should always come first. They said I was selfish and vindictive. They claimed that I was using this circumstance as a means of exacting revenge on them because I had resentment toward my brother. They didn't care that I was still recovering from my near-death experience a week prior. They simply viewed me as a barrier to their beloved son's rescue. They had the audacity to say that they expected me to step up now. They said that this was my opportunity to show that I wasn't a letdown and that I could be part of the family by acting morally. It was crazy. They essentially acknowledged that I wasn't related to them and that helping my brother was the only way I could make amends. Things truly took a turn for the worst when I informed them outright that I wouldn't do it. My mother began crying at my door, screaming things like, "We've already lost one child, and now we're going to lose two, and you're punishing us for loving him more." In contrast, my dad simply became more irate and wasn't attempting to shame me. He repeatedly accused me of being cold-hearted and self-centered, claiming that I had no regard for the family and that I would regret it once they were gone. To be honest, it was everything I could do to not lose it. I was told I was a bad person for not cleaning up my brother's mess, even though I was already fatigued from the hospital stay and could not stand on my crutches. The fact that my parents intentionally treated my brother better and that they love him more than I did just served to exacerbate the situation. I didn't give up though. I warned them that I would call the police if they didn't leave and that I wouldn't pay a dime for his bail or legal bills. After that, they eventually backed off, but not before insulting me once again. My brother's case made headlines a few days after that onslaught at the door. It seems that the deception was far larger than we initially believed. Evidence that he had been transferring business funds for more than a year, some of which had been laundered through fictitious business accounts in his name, was discovered by the police. Additionally, as part of a broader inquiry, they found that he had assisted several colleagues in concealing their embezzled funds. My brother is now being charged with conspiracy and money laundering in addition to fraud. He might spend a significant amount of time behind bars if convicted. The fallout has been harsh. My parents are really freaked out. My brother's reputation has been utterly destroyed after they boasted about his accomplishments to everyone they knew for years. People aren't buying into their attempts to control the situation by claiming that it's all a misunderstanding and that it will all be resolved. When word spread that his son was embroiled in a significant fraud case, my dad even lost a significant client. They're fumbling, and it's obvious they don't know what to do. Naturally, they came stumbling back to me. They made no effort to conceal their desperation this time. They indicated they needed my assistance, Just this once, to get through this because they were under a lot of stress. They insisted that they would have an opportunity to fix things, and keep the family together, if I helped my brother, but I understood exactly what that meant. Keeping the family together meant preserving the appearance that their ideal kid had done nothing wrong, and fixing things meant hiding his transgressions. They've gone completely silent after I told them no once more. Nothing, no texts, no calls. They seem to have given up on me, to be honest. They most likely view me as a hopeless failure who abandoned the family when they most needed her. But what do you know? I no longer give a damn. I feel like I'm in charge for the first time in my life. Knowing that my parents just saw me as a fallback option, someone to control in case something goes wrong, hurts. However, it also feels fantastic to put myself first for once and to finally say no. To appease them, I won't help my brother, and I won't allow them to use guilt to get me to correct a situation they started. They must now deal with the repercussions of their decisions. Second update. Since many of you have been inquiring about my condition, the truth is that things have gotten even more problematic. It was my brother who sent me an email. Since he doesn't have access to a phone while incarcerated, he persuaded one of his friends, who still maintains his innocence, to contact me on his behalf. I was initially inclined to simply remove it without reading it. I assumed it was just another attempt to use guilt to get me to assist him. However, my curiosity overcame me, and I opened it. My brother said he was being framed in the email. Although he vowed he wasn't the mastermind, he acknowledged that he was a part of the fraud at his company. He claims that the superiors used him as a scapegoat to hide their own wrongdoing. He even said that while he was trapped taking the fall, certain powerful executives were still able to move freely. He pleaded with me for assistance, not for our parents but because he believed that I was the only one who could save the family from disintegrating entirely. I was genuinely offended by that line. Perhaps it was because my brother finally admitted how poisonous our parents have been. He acknowledged that they have consistently mistreated me and exploited him to stroke their egos. Seeing him acknowledge that was odd because he had always complied with it. I couldn't get rid of the impression, though, that he was just saying anything he felt would persuade me to assist him. He also said that I should help him by saving the family, which is what my parents have been saying ever since this fiasco began. I kept asking myself if there was any truth to what he was saying, even though I promised myself I was done with all of this. Could it be that he was actually being set up? What if I was mistaken about how huge this was? I wanted to know for sure, part of me. I therefore made the decision to investigate. I mentioned the problem to a buddy of mine who is a lawyer and whom I trusted. Since they were not involved in the case, they were unable to provide me with a complete legal breakdown. However, they did offer me some guidance on where to find additional information. After doing some additional research, I discovered that my brother's story wasn't entirely untrue. There was no doubt that he was a fraudster. However, based on my understanding, it appeared that he wasn't the one controlling everything. Evidently, he was not the only victim of the fraud plan. My brother was utilized as a pawn by several high-level executives who had been transferring corporate funds for years. Since he was responsible for overseeing specific accounts, he was held solely responsible when things went south. My brother was left holding the bag because these superiors had purposefully separated themselves from the grunt work. I felt torn after learning all of this. I was upset that he was involved in something so dubious in the first place. On the one hand, he was involved in a serious crime regardless of whether he was the mastermind or merely a pawn. He wasn't just an innocent bystander who unknowingly became involved in anything. He followed through because he knew what he was doing. Most likely, he believed he would never be caught. However, I did feel a little sorry for him at the same time. Knowing that he was exploited by those with greater strength and expertise in hiding their trails is difficult. It's obvious that those executives were well versed in their roles and made sure my brother would bear the brunt of any negative outcomes. If he hadn't been raised in a household that encouraged him to take shortcuts as long as you were successful on the outside, I couldn't help but wonder how things may have turned out. He most likely believed that he was untouchable because of our parents' unceasing protection and adulation. My folks were unexpectedly silent when I told them what I had discovered. Although they didn't want to acknowledge it, I believe that they secretly understood my brother wasn't an innocent victim. They persisted in promoting the same story, claiming that I was selfish for not prioritizing the family and callous for not assisting him, rather than admitting the reality. It was like speaking to a stone wall when you spoke to them. I've made the decision to stop interacting with them at this time. I've made up my mind and I'm sticking with it. No matter how much he wants to blame the executives, my brother still made his bed and now has to lie about it. My parents are at fault if they wish to continue supporting him. If the situations were reversed, I wouldn't ruin myself trying to help someone who wouldn't do anything for me. To be honest, I've not felt so at ease in a long time. Even though my family will never believe it, I know I made the right decision. I've been treated like I didn't matter for far too long, and I'm sick of it. Although my brother's predicament is awful, I am not responsible for fixing it. Once again, I want to thank everyone who has helped me along the way. Although it hasn't been simple, it has been a huge comfort to know that I'm not the only one who feels this way. Third update, I now have enough information to provide you all with an update, even though it has been more than a month since my last post. I'll start with what my parents did when they realized that insulting me and pleading with me wouldn't work. They made the decision to do something else, which was to make me even more miserable than I already was. They contacted several of my aunts, uncles, and cousins to express their disdain and selfishness for not helping my brother. They gave the impression that my refusal to assist was motivated by spite and that I was simply sitting on a mound of money. All they said was that I was a monster and should not be trusted. Only until one of my cousins contacted me and informed me that my parents were spreading unfavorable rumors about me did I learn the truth. They cleverly omitted the fact that they left me in the hospital and hadn't contacted me since, completely twisting the tale to make it seem like I was harboring resentment. I was only ever summoned to assist my brother. I was hurt at first. Even though I had defended myself, it seemed like I was being punished again. I believed that I would be left on my own with no one to support me. However, an unforeseen event occurred. Several distant relatives began contacting me rather than supporting my parents. It turns out that my parents' treatment of others and constant emphasis on my brother caused them to sour relations with a lot of individuals over the years. I was unaware of the depth of this. I started hearing stories from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years, and to be honest, they were all more startling than the last. My brother once borrowed a substantial amount of money from her husband to invest in a business venture, according to an aunt who informed me about it. Naturally, the plan failed, and my parents severed all ties with my aunt when she attempted to recoup her money. They even propagated the idea that my aunt was avaricious and unsupportive of her family. According to another cousin, my brother blamed a parking lot attendant for my uncle's car crash at a family gathering a few years ago. To keep the family from being embarrassed, my parents supported him and made sure the rumor didn't get out. They accused my uncle of attempting to damage my brother's reputation when he attempted to address them about it. There were several examples like this one, where my parents either covered up my brother's wrongdoing or silenced anyone who dared to speak up. My brother and another family member had a business partnership, but my parents ruined it because they believed the relative wasn't renowned enough to be affiliated with their son, according to one relative. It was both startling and reassuring to hear all of this. I wasn't insane. It's true that my parents have a long history of ignoring others and hiding behind my brother. For a long time, I believed that I was somehow to blame for my parents' treatment of me, that perhaps I wasn't good enough or didn't live up to their standards. It was never about me, though, as I now see. They constantly wanted to keep my brother safe at any costs. They even avoided family members who questioned them or obstructed their path. For those who wonder why my parents were so in need of my assistance, the answer is because I have established a strong life for myself in spite of their lack of encouragement. I've developed excellent relationships and managed my finances wisely in my role as project manager for a reputable IT company. I've saved money and made prudent investments. My parents knew I had the money, which is why they were so frantic. They failed to realize, however, that I didn't want to help just because I could, especially for those who have treated me like an afterthought my whole life. There has been an update on my brother's case. My parents eventually gathered together enough cash from loans and favors to get him out of jail after I refused to bail him out. However, the inquiry was far from finished. My brother made the decision to assist the authorities a few weeks ago. According to what I understand, he provided information about the higher-ups who were complicit in the scam, which aided in the prosecution's progress. He was able to receive a lighter sentence as a result of his cooperation. He will serve a year and then perform community service in lieu of years in prison. To be honest, that doesn't make me feel any better. His cooperation is commendable, but that doesn't change the fact that he initially decided to participate in the plot. Furthermore, I don't think this event will significantly alter my brother. I don't think he will quit having my parents clean up his mess anytime soon. For my part, I've decided to permanently cut off contact with my parents, which I probably should have done a long time ago. They are blocked on all of my platforms. I even instructed the front desk of my building to deny them entry if they returned without warning. I'm tired of serving as their fallback option, scapegoat, or emotional target. I'm surprisingly not depressed about it. I had assumed that leaving my family would be a great loss, but instead it feels liberating. I can now live my life without having to continually compare myself to my brother or ask for morsels of affection from people who would never show it to me. The family members who got in touch have been incredible. They've shown me that I'm not alone, and I feel supported for the first time in a long time. It's weird because after years of my parents excluding me, I've unexpectedly found a family. In fact, I'm excited to get to know these relatives better because many of them have invited me to family events that my parents won't be there. One of my aunts even expressed regret for not recognizing the situation sooner. She claimed that although she always thought something wasn't right with the way my parents treated me, she kept quiet about it because she didn't want to start a fight. She is now one of my biggest supporters, along with a few other family members. For the first time, I feel hopeful, even though I have no idea what the future contains. I appreciate all of your help and guidance during this trip. Reading your comments helped me realize that I wasn't insane for sticking up for myself, even though it hasn't been easy. It feels so amazing to finally feel like I'm in charge of my life. My sister locked me in a basement while I was pregnant. Parents cut her wedding funds after I fell and nearly lost my baby. After 3 years of trying, several rounds of IVF, and what seemed like an endless amount of suffering, I, 33F, am currently 3 months pregnant. My parents have been incredibly supportive during this entire ordeal, so we told them in private a month ago. There was only calm happiness between us, no big reveal, no social media post. In addition, I wanted to be farther along in my pregnancy before making a big announcement, so I didn't want to inform too many people outside of my parents and my husband's parents. Last weekend was my sister's engagement party. Let's call her Emily, 29F. Emily has always had a lot to offer. Being the center of attention is something she enjoys. She performed stunts all over the place as a child to maintain her fame. Holidays with the family. The star was Emily. Birthdays of friends? She somehow made herself the center of attention. Since I simply lack the energy to oppose her, I've lived my entire life letting her have her way. I didn't want the party to be about me, but I did expect some small drama. Since I've been feeling a lot of fatigue lately, I intended to keep in the background, help Emily, and depart early. In order to evade inquiries, I even wore loose clothing and refused to discuss my pregnancy with anyone. Up until my mother pulled me away during the celebration, everything was going smoothly. Since the pregnancy had been difficult thus far, she simply wanted to see how I was feeling. I've had the worst of the early symptoms, so I was happy to have some time to chat to my mother, who was the only one who truly knew how I was feeling. We moved to a secluded area to talk away from the guests. Unfortunately, things took a very other turn when Emily overheard us. In the blink of an eye, Emily went from 0 to 100. Furious, she interrupted the discourse and accused me of trying to take her thunder. I was really perplexed. I attempted to clarify that we were merely having a private talk and that I wasn't making any announcements, as I had previously informed Mom and Dad weeks prior. Emily, however, was having none of it. She said that I was being self-centered and that I couldn't bear to give her a day to herself. Right there, she created a big commotion, and people began to take notice. I felt ashamed. It seemed as though she wasn't even paying attention to me when I insisted that I didn't intend for any of this to occur. She was certain that my purpose in attending her party was to spoil her moment. Emily persisted because she is unable to let things go. She claimed that this was my usual behavior, that I was envious of her, and that I always had to make things about me. I wanted to get out at that time because I was so overwhelmed. But Emily stormed off, so I didn't have to. My mother simply persuaded me to attend the party in order to help my sister. I also reasoned that I could go back to Emily and properly explain what had happened if I allowed her some time to calm down. Once more, I was spared the trouble. Emily came up to me out of nowhere, wearing a strange smile. "I would like to see something in the basement," she remarked. She felt I would like anything about a memento from our early years. To be honest, I didn't give it much thought at the moment. I assumed this was her attempt to make things more amicable. She slammed the door and locked it as soon as I entered the basement, but I followed her downstairs. I went cold. She laughed, and I could hear it through the door. She said it was retaliation for my attempt to make me the focus of her engagement celebration. I knocked and told her to open the door since I initially believed she was kidding, but she didn't. I was left stranded down there as she continued to giggle and left. Panic struck me hard at that time. I wasn't feeling well to start, and it was chilly and dark. The nausea and tension came on full force. As my mind raced with ideas on how I may escape the basement, I began to pace back and forth. I saw that I might be able to climb out of a window. I located a crate under the window and climbed upon it because I needed a boost to pull my body out. Unfortunately, I was in such a panic that I was unaware of how shaky and lightheaded I was. Halfway up on the box, my foot slipped, and I fell, crashing hard on my stomach and side. It was horrifying how much pain rushed through me. In an attempt to determine whether the baby was all right, I laid there for a while, gasping. My heart was pounding, and I broke down in tears of fear and annoyance. Worst-case possibilities kept coming to mind. What if this fall resulted in a miscarriage? What if Emily's dumb joke caused something to happen to my baby? I made an effort to gather myself and gradually succeeded in sitting down on the floor in a more comfortable position. It seemed like forever, but I'm not sure how long I was down there. It must have been at least an hour before anyone came looking for me. I gripped my knees, sat on the chilly floor, and did my best to keep from having a panic attack. Finally, on the other side of the door, I heard my husband's voice calling my name and footsteps. When I knocked feebly on the door, he unlocked it and roughly dragged me out. He sounded desperate. After glancing at me, he declared that we had to depart right now. I didn't protest because I was so afraid and in so much agony. I tried not to cry or stress out during the whole vehicle ride as we hurried to the emergency room. Whether this was it, or if I had lost the baby because my sister couldn't stand someone else receiving attention for 5 minutes, was all I could think about. They performed an ultrasound at the hospital. I barely managed to hold my breath the entire time. The doctor stated it was a close call, but fortunately the baby was unharmed. The result might have been worse if I had fallen more forcefully. I was both emotionally spent and relieved. My husband was incensed and informed me he would not tolerate this. He called my parents right away to let them know what had transpired. No one had been given an explanation because we had left the party so quickly. My spouse requested that my parents have a firm conversation with Emily and inform her that we would not be seeing her again until after I gave birth. Believe me, I am incredibly thankful to have a husband that aggressively defends me. We ultimately spent several hours in the emergency room before I was stable enough to return home. The party had long since ended by the time we returned home, and my phone was exploding with texts from my parents. At first, I didn't respond to any of them because I simply wanted to go to sleep and forget that the day had even occurred. After texting them to reassure them that I was fine, my husband turned off his phone as well. I learned what had transpired after we left when my folks phoned me again the following morning. My folks were apparently rather perplexed by what was happening when we hurried over to the emergency room. Since my husband had made a little commotion by asking Emily where I was, they made an effort to get Emily to tell them what had happened. My parents were incensed when my husband later called them from the hospital to inform them of Emily's actions. In front of everyone who was still at the party, my parents chastised Emily right away for locking me in the basement. Calling it a harmless prank that went too far, my mom attempted to minimize it, but my dad wasn't buying it. Given everything I had gone through to become pregnant, he was incensed that Emily would act in such a careless manner. When he finally told Emily that enough was enough, he made the momentous revelation that my parents would no longer be providing any financial support for Emily's wedding and honeymoon. My parents had always expressed their desire to financially support Emily and me during our significant life events. They had planned to support Emily in the same way that they had supported my wedding. Emily, regrettably, never imagined that they would ever break their word. Emily went totally crazy. Reiterating that I had destroyed her life, she broke down in tears in front of everyone. She accused me of doing all of this on purpose and referred to me as evil. I wasn't shocked when my parents later informed me that they had never witnessed Emily act so strangely. When things didn't go her way, Emily would always react negatively. She pleaded with my parents to change their minds, but my father refused to budge. Ever since, Emily and my mother have been bombarding me with calls and texts. My mother keeps urging me to speak with my father and persuade him to reconsider, but I informed her that I was done. I'm not going to ignore Emily's transgression in an effort to maintain harmony. Naturally, Emily has been bombarding my phone with every possible abuse. She is accusing me of being responsible for everything, claiming that nothing of this would have occurred if I had simply kept quiet. She maintains that I have ruined her life and that her fiancé is now beginning to question if he truly wants to wed her. A part of me feels bad, but I also know that I'm not to blame. I still feel horrible though. I can't help but feel that I must be at fault in some way, even though my husband and father have both told me that I'm not. Is it my fault that my sister's engagement, wedding, and honeymoon were ruined? First update. I had no idea my post would become that popular. I want to start by saying how much I appreciate all of the comments and support on my first post. Reading them has been really beneficial. It gives me comfort to know that I'm not alone in my feelings. Before I give you an update on what's happened since my last post, I'd like to address some questions that many people had about whether my parents ever gave me preferential treatment or whether Emily and I had a history of animosity. I wouldn't say my parents showed preference, to be honest. Growing up, my parents were actually fairly fair. Despite their best efforts to treat us all fairly, Emily only received somewhat more attention due to her status as the family's baby. But Emily seemed to become an attention seeker and self-centered person as a result of that little more attention. No matter the occasion, she was the child who would act out if someone else was given the limelight. To keep the peace, my parents largely caved into her rather than establishing limits. Therefore, Emily obviously got away with much more than I ever did, even if I wouldn't call it favoritism. I've tried to maintain harmony between us for the majority of my life. Since it was simpler to let her have her way than to argue, I learned to do so. In addition, I always believed that it was my responsibility as the older sister to be the more responsible one and avoid upsetting anyone. But Emily always managed to drive me to the edge, no matter how hard I tried. I had to balance not to stomp on her toes so she wouldn't blow up at every family gathering. I suppose that contributes to her current sense of entitlement. The much-anticipated update is now here. Emily lost it all after my parents stopped sponsoring her wedding. She accused me of stealing her moment and wrecking her life in a lengthy text message the next day. By the way, she didn't say sorry for locking me in the basement. Rather, she went on to add that I took it too seriously and that it was only a joke. She went into full assault mode when I didn't answer. I staged the entire pregnancy crisis to get attention, Emily began telling everyone in the family. The rest of our family soon learned that I was pregnant when my husband hurried me to the emergency room that day, which was not something I wanted at all. I've had to deal with the rest of my family contacting me in addition to my sister's wild calls and texts. These communications were initially intended to ask how I was doing and to offer congratulations. However, they gradually started to seem strange. Many family members began questioning me about how I could pretend to be pregnant in order to undermine Emily. I didn't know what was happening. Emily, it turned out, had started circulating the rumor that I had arranged to get hurt in order to spoil her engagement celebration. She spread the word among our family members that I was some malevolent genius who attempted to ruin her life. It was quite painful when multiple family members contacted me, perplexed and unsure if the pregnancy was genuine. Ava, one of my cousins, even questioned me about whether I was fabricating the pregnancy to get even with Emily. It was crazy. My mom has been attempting to remain impartial throughout this, which genuinely feels like a betrayal, which has made matters worse. She insists that I must be the stronger one and that Emily is simply anxious about the wedding. But when my own sister is spreading false information about me at one of the most joyous moments of my life, how am I meant to be the stronger person? It wears you out. I made the decision to cut ties with my mother as well after attempting to argue with her without success. She arrived at my residence approximately 2 weeks following Emily's engagement celebration. My husband urged me not to open the door, but I foolishly assumed she could be coming to apologize when she kept hammering on my door and demanding that I solve this because I had ruined everything. She wasn't, to give you a hint. She began yelling at me the moment I opened the door, accusing me of ruining her life and causing everything to fall apart. She even accused me of being the reason her fiancé's parents were re-evaluating the wedding since they believed she was immature. She really lost it when I tried to clarify that she was the one who had locked me in a basement and that none of this was my fault. When Emily noticed the framed ultrasound picture I placed on the coffee table, she barged into my living room, ripped the frame off, and then tore the ultrasounds to pieces. After everything that had transpired, I couldn't believe she would do anything so heinous, and I was paralyzed. She yelled that she wished I lost the baby so she could regain her life before she walked out, but my husband was furious and told her to go. Her level of anger was unprecedented, and it frightened me. I just started crying after she went. For hours, I was unable to stop crying. Everything seemed to have happened at once. Being imprisoned in the basement, nearly losing the baby, and then discovering that my sister's malice knew no bounds. I couldn't comprehend how someone could wish that on their own family, so I kept repeating what she had said in my mind. To be honest, I'm not sure if I can dispute my husband's desire to cut off any communication with her right away. Even though I know I should cut her off, I still feel bad about it, as if I'm somehow at fault for everything. Emily is simply in a horrible place, according to my mom, and I should attempt to forgive her. However, how can you forgive someone who wishes harm on your child? Emily's fiancé contacted me personally, which further complicated matters. He stated he's been having a lot of trouble with Emily's unpredictable conduct and expressed regret for her actions during the party. He said he's beginning to see a side of her that he didn't know existed, and he's not sure if he can still go through with the wedding. I was unsure of how to respond to him. I'm stuck in the middle of their relationship turmoil, which is upsetting because I never wanted to be involved. Right now, I'm unsure of what to do. For the sake of my mother, I have mixed feelings about forgiving Emily, but I'm also afraid she'll continue to harm me. I'm not sure whether she can change. I don't want to be preoccupied with worrying about what she's going to do next during my pregnancy. Right now, my baby and my health are my top priorities. We're just attempting to minimize the stress, and my spouse has been tremendously supportive. However, it still feels like things with Emily are far from over. She won't go down without creating more drama since you know her. If anything else comes up, I'll keep everyone updated. I'm not holding my breath, but right now I'm just hoping for a little calm. Second update. Hello, I haven't updated on this site in a month, but I've been so busy. I thought I'd give you all an update since a lot has happened and I've finally had some spare time. Now let me start where I left off. I was distraught for a week after Emily tore my ultrasounds and ran gone. I assume that Emily's fiancé contacted me because he was hesitant to marry her after she told him about what she had done. They had apparently started fighting frequently. Her fiancé contacted me to tell me what had transpired. He apparently attempted to reassure her that since the two of them had saved up more than enough money, they wouldn't require my parents' money to carry out the wedding. My sister, however, would not listen. She was determined to destroy my life in the same manner that I had allegedly destroyed hers. She would talk about how she could get even with me all day and all night. Her fiancé was frightened. When it finally got to him, he told her that he was going to be leaving. He even accused her of being insane and said that she was the only reason he was unable to stay. My sibling was a complete mess. She kept threatening me over the phone and text, accusing me of destroying her life once more. I blocked her number after ignoring it until I could stand it no more. She was not deterred by that. She started sending me targeted texts on my husband's phone. She even questioned him about how he could tolerate being married to me since, in her opinion, I just had my own interest in mind. She also insulted my unborn child without holding back. I really wanted to call her and scream at her, but I realized it would only make things worse for both me and my child. Therefore, I also had my husband block her number. For a few days, everything was quiet until my mother called. My mother informed me that my sister had visited her home the previous day. Emily was sobbing uncontrollably and was hysterical. During her engagement, she would not stop talking about how I should remain quiet about my pregnancy. She went on and on about how my very existence had destroyed every part of her life. She claims that because I always seem to get the best of everything, she has had to make many compromises. Given how many of my special events I had to forfeit so she could have her time in the spotlight, I'm not sure where she got the idea. In any case, my mom was struck with insight after hearing my sister vent about how I was to blame for all of her negative experiences. She became aware of Emily's irrational and entitled behavior. I suppose my mother had a real look into my sister's thoughts, and nothing supported her theory that Emily was simply having a rough day. My mother finally had enough of Emily's tirade and confronted her about her insane behavior. That did not sit well with my sister. It worsened her breakdown, if anything. She was even more irate because the only person she believed to be on her side had turned against her. Emily apparently hurried upstairs to my former bedroom after getting up from the couch where they were conversing. Then she started destroying my room. She tore up all my certificates, smashed every trophy I had ever earned, and hurled items off the shelves. My mom was pretty upset about that. When my sister and I moved out, my mom, who is quite nostalgic, made sure to leave our bedrooms exactly as they were, clean only. She was reminded by our rooms that we will always be connected in some way. It was like Emily erasing all of my mom's best memories at once when she tore my room apart. My mother was enraged and heartbroken. She shouted at Emily to get out. Amazingly, my sister grinned at my mother's rage before leaving. Yes, at the moment, my mother isn't a huge fan of Emily. She then called me to express her regret for always defending my sister's actions. She assured me that since Emily's actions were so heinous, I had every right to feel the way I did. To be honest, I never imagined that my mother would genuinely realize how awful Emily was. It was shocking to hear her apologize. However, I felt thankful because I became acutely aware of how much guilt I had been released from. My mother supporting me and not pressuring me to maintain harmony with Emily made me feel so much better. My parents have informed Emily that they no longer communicate with her. Despite my best efforts to support her, my mom has been inconsolable. I spent a lot of time with my hubby assisting my parents in reassembling my room. My dad has stated on multiple occasions that he does not want to see Emily for a long time and is officially furious with her. Emily's fiancé had finally broken up with her by the time I last spoke with him. He broke the lease on their flat, which cost him a lot of money, but he's happier today. I have no idea where Emily is, and to be quite honest, I don't give a damn about her whereabouts or activities. All I want is for her to live far away from me, at least until I give birth. That's all for now. At this moment, I don't believe anything more dramatic could occur, but I suppose only time will tell. I hope that I will only return to provide another update after giving delivery. I want to thank everyone who has read my posts and sent me well wishes until then. Third update. I've returned with what I hope will be the last update, everyone. Despite the crazy circumstances, I'm pleased to announce that I've given birth to a gorgeous, healthy boy. He brightens our days, and to be honest, having him here has helped us see things more clearly. Naturally, though, Emily couldn't let me enjoy this moment without causing a final piece of mayhem. It was unusually quiet for the first several weeks after my birth. When Emily remained distant, I had the hope that she would finally stop bothering me. For the first time in months, my husband and I felt as though we could breathe as we adapted to life with a newborn. My folks had been amazing. My mom even brought over meals to help out, and they kept us updated on a daily basis. It was quiet, and I was really relieved. Especially because my parents had taken care to keep Emily and the trouble she had caused us out of the conversation. However, my mom noted in passing that Emily had been inquiring about the baby a lot during one of their trips. Emily apparently wanted to find out when she could visit my son. Even though my mom was wary since she was aware of Emily's instability, she still felt bad about excluding Emily. However, my dad was adamantly opposed to Emily getting close to us. Neither he nor I had any faith in her. I promised my mother I would give it some thought though, because I didn't want to cause any more drama. A week later, I received a text message from an unknown sender. I read the message and instantly recognized the sender, Emily, even if the number was unknown. There were several insults in the message. She referred to me as a self-centered jerk who was attempting to remove herself from the family by having a child first. It should have been her with the first grandchild, she insisted, and my kid didn't deserve the life I was providing him. I was taken aback. Even after all this time, her jealousy and bitterness remained strong. The last straw was a panicked call from my husband's mother one morning. I was an unfit mother, according to a letter, yes, a real letter, that someone had written her. It contained numerous falsehoods, including claims that I was mentally disturbed, that I was ignoring my child, and even a veiled suggestion that I was abusive. I had my mother-in-law give me a photo of the anonymous letter. It turned out to be Emily's handwriting. My dear mother-in-law was appalled that someone who knew my husband and me well enough could be so explicit in their criticisms against us, even if she didn't believe a word in the letter. She was likewise appalled by the charges and concerned that we might be the target of someone. That was it for me. I was at my breaking point. Emily had gone too far, and I couldn't let her continue to have an impact on my family and my life. My spouse and I decided to return to his home state after talking it over. Although we had discussed it previously, it seemed like the only real way to get out of her madness this time. To ensure Emily would have no way of finding us, we took care to keep the location of our move in his hometown a secret from as many people as possible. We packed up our home and made the major move over the course of the following few weeks. Despite the fact that we would no longer be close to them, my parents supported our choice. My mom was devastated that our relationship had devolved to this point, and my dad was still upset with Emily, but they recognized that we had to act in our sons' and our own best interests. Emily, meantime, is finally having to deal with some repercussions. She reportedly started stalking and harassing her ex-fiancé over the phone and in person after he broke up with her. She nearly immediately broke the restraining order he had issued against her. She is currently coping with the legal fallout from that. At this point, my parents have essentially stopped communicating with her, and I must admit that I'm relieved. I'm fine with the fact that I don't know where she is right now. I'm not supposed to fix her, but she needs help. Life has been so much better after the transfer. Surrounded by his family, who have been nothing but encouraging, my husband and I are getting settled in our new house. Without the constant drama Emily brought into our life, I feel like we can now concentrate on raising our baby in a peaceful, caring setting. I cannot say that I will ever completely comprehend Emily's actions, but I've accepted that she is no longer in my life, and that's all right. My child, my marriage, and my peace must all be safeguarded. I had that peace for the first time in what seems like forever. I want to express my gratitude to everyone who has followed along on this crazy adventure. You have no idea how much your support has meant to me, and I'm delighted to report a happy conclusion.